drives in the run, and the Rays have insurance. Rounded to third, picked up by Caballero. Here's the throw to first, and the Rays salvage one in St. Louis. And the hometown kid makes good. And his team, the Tampa Bay Rays, beat St. Louis tonight by the final score of 6-4.
Yeah, this was a frustrating one, man. It really was. I feel like we played a pretty clean game. We had some really nice defensive plays, Nato, and what Wynn continues to do is just, it's fun to watch. And then on the other side of the ball, I felt like Gibby did a nice job in navigating that lineup. We took some really good at-bats, especially giving up 2 in the first and then coming right back and punching back with 3. Sometimes baseball just happens. Tonight was a little bit of that.
That was Ollie Marmol after the game last night. That audio, unfortunately, courtesy of the Rays Television Network. With Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. To me, I kind of agree with Ollie. I felt like that was just a baseball happens sometimes type of game. Yes, your bullpen came in, they imploded. It was a bad night from your bullpen. You didn't really have Kittredge. He was technically available for a closing situation, but otherwise they wanted to stay away from him if possible. Ryan Helsley flat out unavailable, completely unavailable last night. And so what that means is everybody gets bumped up at least 1 peg, potentially 2, depending on what the situation was going to be for the Cardinals in that game last night. And they let the game get away from them. Like, it's just that simple. JoJo, a sinker, caught too much of the heart of the plate, left on left, it left the ballpark. You have Kyle Leahy coming in. It wasn't one of his better performances this season. And then you've got the guy that you got from the Rays, and Armstrong, who comes into the game. He didn't look great last night either. Bad game from the bullpen. Your offense didn't come through in a few clutch situations. They hit the ball, I think, 95-plus miles per hour 12 different times in the game. I think 5 of them were recorded for outs, most of those with an expected batting average of 400 or better. Baseball happens, man. I can't get too frustrated from last night. It was frustrating the way that they lost the game, but if they play like that consistently over the next couple of weeks, you're going to win more often than you don't. Last night was just one of those games that went the other way. T-Bone, what was your biggest takeaway from the loss last night?
My biggest takeaway was I don't trust the underbelly of this bullpen. And I do think the offense, to an extent, I would hear the argument of, you know what, they ran into some bad luck. The double where Scott would have scored easily from first on Mason Wynn's double. Okay, there was a little bad luck on the offensive side. I don't know if I really want to hear it on the pitching side, because when you pitch to contact, you just roll the dice and play this game. And
it's true.
I still don't trust JoJo Romero. And I understand, like, the bullpen was down. I'm not going to criticize Ollie and be like, oh, why'd you not go to Kittredge or Helsley in that one? No, I understand that those guys were down and you want to try and avoid them. But the moment they went to their bullpen and they brought in Kyle Leahy, I was at the game last night, I looked to my right, my sister went with me, and I said, they're going to lose this baseball game, because I don't trust this underbelly of the bullpen. I looked at Kyle Leahy and I said, okay, bottom of the order, like, you just, like, cross your fingers, cross your toes, and hope he gets those 2 guys out. Well, he did. What happens? A run ends up scoring. You go to JoJo Romero, who is their top left-handed arm currently out of their bullpen, and I still don't feel confident about him, even though, like, the numbers tell you, like, hey, since the All-Star break, he's been okay. He's been fine. Opponents are hitting 192 against him. Has a 2.45 ERA. Yeah. Now he's got a 3.99 FIP, so his FIP is pretty high up there so far. But I just look at this bullpen and say, man, it feels a lot like 2022. And the reason I say that is you think back to that 22 bullpen, you had, like, the big 3 that they trusted, which was Helsley, Jordan Hicks, and Giovanni Gallegos. And that's kind of where I am with this bullpen. I trust Ryan Helsley, even though there's been some off moments for him lately. Still trust him. I trust Andrew Kittredge. I trust Ryan Fernandez. Outside of that, my circle of trust has gone from, like, a couple of weeks ago, a month ago of, man, there's like 6 guys in this bullpen I trust, to I think you're down to 3, and I think the underbelly of the bullpen really showed itself last night.
I think there's some truth to that. I would also add, though, I don't think there's many teams that have more than 4 guys at any given time that they trust. I think what was unique about the Cardinals bullpen for a decent portion of the season is that they did. They had like 5 or 6 guys that you could go to in any spot and say to yourself, all right, I kind of like our chances here. And right now, you don't feel that way. I think it's fair to at least have some skepticism about JoJo Romero right now. I think he's been better, but I can understand, like, the strikeout numbers are not there the way that they were at the beginning of the season. The underlying numbers are not as good as they were at the beginning of the season. I still like JoJo. I think he's been better in his last 4 or 5 outings than he was, especially in the middle of July. But I understand the skepticism there. I thought this quote from Ollie Marmol to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and it's in Derek Gould's piece from earlier today, was telling to your point on what they want to have out of their bullpen. He said, a good bullpen, you like having 2 lefties that are steady, 3 to 4 righties that are steady, and then an optionable right-handed pitcher and an optionable left-handed pitcher if needed. I feel like the balance has been fairly low-key compared to what we've experienced from the Rays, for example. They've turned over a new reliever every game in this series, and that's their norm. I feel like we haven't done that as much this year. There's not an immediate need to change or a rush to change this group, but we also have to figure out what makes the most sense overall. Now, he was saying that with the backdrop of Riley O'Brien, who's working his way back to the big league level. He's still on his rehab stint, but very soon they're going to make a call on that, whether they leave him down in AAA for a baseball decision or call him up. I would call him up. I think it's time to see what he can do in the bullpen that they have currently. There's clearly, in my opinion, a spot for him. That Leahy spot, just see what Riley O'Brien can do in that. And if he fails, cool. Now refresh it with somebody else. Bring up one of the starters down in AAA right now, like whether that's a Graceffo or a McGreevy. Like, bring up one of those guys to find out what they can do out of a bullpen capacity. Then you get into September and you've got another option that you can bring up. That's something that I think they can do. When you look at what he said, though, 2 lefties that are steady, 3 to 4 righties that are steady. Do you feel like this bullpen has that right now?
No. I think you've got 3 righties, I would say. Like, I think you probably fit that mold of the 3 that I had mentioned, Fernandez, Kittredge, and Helsley. I don't know if there's but maybe 1 lefty that's in that bullpen that you probably trust. And when I say this, it's not a shot against John King, but he's probably the one, and I really don't want him pitching late in games. I want him, like, coming in like, hey, things have gone awry in that 5th, 6th inning. We really need a double play ball. That's the John King role. John King getting a clean inning from, like, 7th inning on, they don't have. He should not be in that spot. They clearly don't trust Matthew Liberatore. He was fresh and ready to go last night if you wanted to use him in that situation. They still trust Jojo Romero, and I'm just not at that point to where I say, hey, Jojo Romero is the same guy I saw in the first half. That Jojo Romero in the first half that had the swing and miss stuff, you could bring him in. He could go against a lefty or righty. Didn't matter. That guy I trusted because he's got swing and miss. He doesn't have that anymore. And I don't know if it's because his changeup's gone awry. I don't know what exactly it is that's throwing things off for Jojo Romero. But they do not have the 2 lefties that they trust in that bullpen. And that's why we said after, I don't remember which game it was, there was a game right around, I think it was in Pittsburgh, if I remember correctly, like right around that trade deadline. And we came on the air and we said, they need a left-handed reliever when we get to the trade deadline. I think they had the 3 righties that they needed. They needed a lefty reliever to add to this bullpen that they could trust in high-leverage situations. And for me, they don't have that guy, and they are 1 bullpen arm short. We've talked about this. 3 big bats, 3 big starters, 4 legit relievers for the playoffs. They are 1 reliever short.
Yeah, I feel like you've got 3 for sure. I feel good about Kittredge. I feel good about Helsley. And I know people are going to say, well, how can you possibly feel good about Helsley? I feel like he had 1.5, essentially, blow-ups. I feel fine about him. Helsley's still one of the best relievers in the game. That's going to happen to anybody. Fernandez has had some more issues lately than you'd like, but I do think he's a trustworthy reliever. I feel good about him when they go to him in the bullpen. That's 3 from the right side. I feel like you've got 1 lefty that I trust, and it could be somebody different every night. But I do, for the most part, trust, especially in a lower leverage spot, 6th, 7th inning, John King. And I do still honestly kind of like Jojo Romero. I'm higher on him than you are. I think the problem for me is I need 1 more reliever that I trust. And I frankly don't care if it's a righty or a lefty. It's why I was a little frustrated with what they ultimately got at the deadline with Sean Armstrong. I don't think he was ever expected to be one of these arms that we're talking about. He is somebody that just extends your bullpen the way that like a Chris Stratton did a few years ago, where, hey, if you fiddle some knobs, you tweak a couple of things here or there, maybe you unlock something more, and then he becomes a guy that you potentially bring back for next year, like maybe. But otherwise, he's fine. He's somebody that can help you in the 5th or 6th inning if you get into a jam. What they needed was somebody that could pitch in the 7th inning normally, in the 8th inning if you don't have Ryan Helsley or Andrew Kittredge available. And that could be a left-handed arm that's good with both lefties or righties, or a right-handed arm that doesn't have significant splits against lefties. They didn't acquire that player, and I think you felt that last night. That was the presence to me that you were lacking. I would have liked to have seen somebody like that available for them, and they just frankly didn't have it. It's why I thought they missed when they ended up going with Sean Armstrong over like a Luis Garcia, or who was the other arm that we were talking about from the Nationals?
Finnegan, is that who it was?
No, it was the other guy that they had. Whatever.
Oh,
Floro. Those were the two guys that I thought made more sense for the Cardinals, and right now I think you're feeling what they decided to go with instead. You saw that lack of that big-time right-handed presence last night.
And I will say this, I agree with that sentiment. I think if you had that fourth arm that you trusted, like if JoJo was at the level of like I fully trusted JoJo Romero, I really like the Sean Armstrong addition. Why? Because there were some underlying numbers, like his FIP was super low, and that's kind of what they sold themselves on was, oh, well, don't really look at the ERA, look at the FIP. We think we can do your twiddling of knobs and see if we can get him fixed. Problem is they didn't have that fourth arm, and that's why they end up feeling short, like you saw last night. To your point, I think if you were a team that you've said, hey, JoJo Romero's been pitching really well, we still really trust that guy.
His FIP was 5 this year.
Well, then never mind. They had no reason.
Expected ERA was 5. There's like a disagreement here between the FIP and the expected numbers, but yeah, I don't know if that's. I think he was just like a
bad bullpen arm.
Yeah, I mean, an okay bullpen arm. Has a little bit of strikeout stuff, but otherwise, like he's not the guy that they needed in this bullpen, in my opinion. I think they needed to go shopping for something a little bit better, and what they ended up with is, we need to get rid of Dylan Carlson. We need a reliever. This is the move that we can make with the Rays, who want Dylan Carlson. And ultimately, that's kind of how they ended up.
BK, it's a 3.8 FIP right now. 3.8. Yeah. Imagine.
He's not the guy. After watching him, and I understand it's a small sample size so far, that dude ain't it. He's fine, but he's not the guy that's going to get you over the top. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the moves that this team can make. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. YouTube chat off and running today at youtube.com/101ESPNSTL. The Cardinals do have some moves that they could make on the roster. I don't think many of them include the bullpen. But once again last night, they had a big spot where they came up with a left-handed bat against a left-handed reliever. And guess what, T-Bone? They were lacking another right-handed bat off of the bench. Is that something that could be fixed? There's one way they could do it. We'll tell you about it next year on 101 ESPN. With Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. So it's past time for the Cardinals to make a decision on what they're going to do with Nolan Gorman. But last night was the latest reminder of this, T-Bone. They've got a Nolan Gorman problem. And I'm still a fan of what he can potentially offer to this team. He has the ability to do damage with the baseball, and that is something that this team lacks. Last night, what they were missing? A home run. They didn't hit one. And if they would have, you would have felt better about their chances to be able to win. And that sounds obvious, but man, that is the formula for this team. If they slug, they win. When they don't, they have a hard time doing exactly that. And Nolan Gorman is a big part of that formula, but he has been terrible in the second half of the season, and he's been striking out at a 40% clip for the entirety of the season. In the second half, T-Bone, he's batting like 200, he's striking out about 40% of the time once again. He's got an OPS of right around 500. They have not gone to him very often as a starting player. And even when he's on the bench, regardless of if it's a righty or a lefty on the mound, they're not going to him late in games either. So they don't trust him to start. They don't trust him in a big spot as a pinch hitter. So he doesn't really have a role on this team. Last night, 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts. And then they get into a late game situation, and this, to me, was a spot that I found to be pretty interesting from Ollie Marmol. It is the 6th inning. Richard Lovelady is pitching for the Tampa Bay Rays. I didn't just make up that name. That's a real person. Lars Nootbaar is expected to lead off. The Cardinals at the time up 4-2. They decide to pinch hit Tommy Pham for Lars Nootbaar, again, to lead off that inning with a lead 4-2. So you're taking out a better defender for Tommy Pham, which was a little puzzling to me when you're up in that game, going up against a left-handed pitcher. The reason why it was puzzling to me is because you have Gorman and Scott coming up after Nootbaar in that inning. You could have used Pham for either of those two, but because you're up, you're probably not using him for Scott because you want Scott's defense in center field. So the decision ultimately comes down to, if I'm going to use Tommy Pham in this inning against a lefty, because it's the one time where you're guaranteed to see a lefty because he's already in the game, you got to face 3 batters. You can either use him for Nootbaar or for Gorman. I think I want to use him in that inning for Gorman, not for Nootbaar, because now I get more information on does Noot get on or not. That potentially allows me to do damage with Pham in that spot against the lefty. And if you use him for Gorman, I can bump Donovan down to second base, and I potentially, if not improve, I'm at least stagnant defensively at both of those 2 spots. Going to Pham over Nootbaar means that you're getting worse defensively in that spot. It was a strange decision there, but I do wonder if some of this was they wanted to see what Gorman could do in that game yesterday. Because I think it's time, T-Bone, to me, to make a decision on Nolan Gorman. And one of the reasons why is because I think we've seen, whether it's with Victor Scott or with Jordan Walker, guys have gone down and made some changes with less pressure down in AAA to get themselves right. And I think it's just about time for Nolan Gorman to do that. I've said all year, I think it's time for him to make the changes at the major league level. Well, that hasn't worked. So you got to try something new, and they need a right-handed bat desperately for spots like last night, another one beyond just Tommy Pham. There are some that are hitting at a high level right now down in AAA. Do you agree that it is time to make a call on Nolan Gorman and potentially send him down to AAA?
I don't think Gorman will benefit from going to AAA.
But does your team benefit? At this point, it has to be about prioritizing winning at this level.
I think the team would benefit from Gorman going down, but I would argue that Crawford should just be DFA'd and you keep Gorman on the roster. They're not going to do that. So
if I tell you that you're operating under these parameters of
bad roster management.
Correct. But this is the game, right? Like, you tell me the rules, I'll play the game. If the game is we can't DFA Brandon Crawford because that is their choice internally. Now I have to make moves around that. Yes, I agree with you. It's bad management, in my opinion. I would just DFA Crawford today and bring up Sajaci for that spot. I think that's the best way to utilize that roster spot. But because they're not going to, we now have to play by their rules. And that means making a decision on Gorman instead of making that decision on Crawford. Now, what would you do in that scenario?
I think Gorman's still here. I think Gorman is here to work and see if he can hit right-handed pitching.
You think he should be here, or you think that's what they will do?
Both. I don't think Gorman benefits from AAA. I really don't. And I understand that, look, they sent down Victor Scott. They sent down Jordan Walker. Gorman's swing is going to be like this at the big league level, and you just hope that you can kind of cut down the strikeout rate. I don't think it improves at all by going to AAA. And even if you're saying, well, what about if we just upgrade the roster? I think then you really kind of water down the trade value of Nolan Gorman going into the offseason, that I think you're just at the point now where you're holding on to a Gorman until rosters expand if we're playing by the parameter of Brandon Crawford has to be here because of his great hair. I think you then just hold Gorman until about September, and then when the rosters expand, then you look to bring up a right-handed bat, whether that be Jordan Walker, Thomas Ajayci, although you got to add him to the 40-man.
But is Gorman helping you? Are you a better team right now with Nolan Gorman on the team, or with Thomas Ajayci on the team, or with Jordan Walker on the team, or with Lucan Baker on the team, or Ivan Herrera on the team? Is Gorman actually helping this team win baseball games right now? Because I would argue no.
I would agree with that. I still think there's the prospect of he can, though. And I think the only way for him to be able to get to that point is by continuing to play. And we talk about it.
But he's not playing hardly.
Well, that's the thing. They've got to play Nolan Gorman. I think they have to stick with him at second base against right-handed pitching. Against lefties, I think he's your platoon. I think the platoon is he's out in the lineup, Donovan's at second base, and Tommy Pham starting in the outfield. But against righties, they've got to play Nolan Gorman like they did last night to see if he can get hot. Because we've talked about when he gets hot, he can carry this team for a month stretch. And I still think that's in his bat. Even though he's had all of his struggles this season, I think you have to keep him on the roster.
But is he going to get hot when he's not playing? Like, this is part of why I'm with you. My ideal scenario with Nolan Gorman would be you have him around, you DFA Brandon Crawford, you better utilize that spot on your bench. And now Gorman, like one day a week, he can DH for you. Another day he can play second base for you. And then a couple of days a week against right-handed pitching, coming out of the bullpen, you use him as damage off of the bench, right? Like, there's ways to utilize Gorman where it's not going to kill you. But for this team right now, they have such little margin for error that they need every spot on the roster to be somebody that contributes, for the most part, other than the Crawford spot, which is obviously not going to contribute for them. But they need spots on their roster to contribute. And Gorman isn't contributing right now. And so if I'm not going to utilize him most days as a starter for me, and I'm not seeing the production from him right now, I don't think it changes anything for his trade value if he goes down to AAA. I don't think so. I think front offices have all of the information that we have available to us. They can see the dude striking out nearly 40% of the time, but he still has that massive power and a lot of club control. If they want to trade him this offseason, he's going to have the same value this offseason if he goes down to AAA or if he's here at the big league level, because his struggles at the big league level certainly aren't helping his trade value either. Ultimately, this comes, and this is something that frustrates me about the way that they've managed the roster all year long. This is not just a right now problem. It's a multiple months of issues with the way that they've managed this team, the 26 and the 40-man. They do not prioritize winning at the big league level. They prioritize, like, they're trying to serve two different masters simultaneously. One is winning. The other is this development thing, right? Katie said it to us yesterday on the show. They do not call up big prospects, regardless of if that's Jordan Walker, top 10 prospect in baseball, or Thomas Ajayci, borderline top 100 prospect, to be a bench role most of the time. I think it's time to do that. Like, we're into August, man. These guys had 4 months of baseball down at the minor league level. They've had their at-bats. Can you help me by playing off of the bench 2 to 3 times a week and starting a couple of times a week? My answer to that is yes. Like, Ivan Herrera, let's do this, man. Thomas Ajayci, let's do it. If that means they go down and maybe they get a couple hot weeks out of Lucan Baker. I'm not sure that he has that at the big league level, but let's find out, dude. It's not going to hurt you to be able to find out what he can do for you at this level. They're going to expand the roster soon enough. That'll allow them another roster spot to add a right-handed bat. But for right now, you need it. And these games matter. And when you get into a late game situation like yesterday and you don't have that right-handed presence to come and pinch hit for whether it's Nolan Gorman or Victor Scott or Lars Nootbaar, or a guy that's really struggled against lefties, and Alec Burleson, who went 0 for 5 yesterday as well. Like, eventually you got to have that option for you coming off of the bench. And right now the Cardinals are playing without it, and it's hurting them. It's hurting them, and it's losing them baseball games.
Yeah, they've hamstrung their roster, and I don't understand why they have that lack of, oh, this guy was a prospect, so he can't be up to the big leagues unless he's actually starting. I think that's only the case for, like, you're legitimate. We think this is a franchise pillar moving forward. Like Jordan Walker, yeah, that makes sense for Jordan Walker. Victor Scott, that makes sense for Victor Scott, because they view him as the future center fielder. They view him as the guy that's there for the next, 6 years whenever he takes the job and is ready to go. But, Thomas Ajayci, is he like a 6-year starting big leaguer? Like, is he the Cardinals' future second baseman? My answer to that
not.
is
JJ
probably
Weatherhold's
not.
probably your second baseman.
Exactly. It's him, or even until you get to that point, it can be Brendan Donovan because you've got so many outfielders. That's what I don't understand about why not just bring these guys up. And we've talked about this in the past. I think we talked about it when Lucan Baker got his first shot in 2023, which is, well, how is he supposed to have success if he's just coming off the bench? Well, if he's going to be a big leaguer, that's his role.
Yep.
Like, what's Luken Baker's ceiling as a big leaguer? No offense to him, it's probably as a bench bat. Thomas Saggese, what's his future role? Maybe it is as a starting utility guy, but to get to that spot first, you've got to be a guy that can come off of the bench.
It's like being in the NFL and being a sixth-round wide receiver. Hey, eventually you might start for a team, but to start things off, you got to be playing special teams.
Yeah.
You're going to get a few plays a game, or maybe it's a gadget role. And if you excel in that, you can expand your role with the roster, right? When they traded for Tommy Pham, the goal was this guy's going to exclusively play against left-handed pitching. He's going to be a starter against lefties, coming off of the bench against left-handed relievers. Guess what? When you start producing the way that Tommy Pham does, you start getting more opportunities. If you see a guy like, whether it's Ivan Herrera or Thomas Saggese or Luken Baker, Jordan Walker, whoever they were to call up, if they come up and start just mashing the baseball left and right, you will expand the role. They will find other opportunities for you the same way that they do with bullpen arms. If a guy comes in and looks great in the 6th inning, well, guess what? You're going to start seeing him a little bit more in the 7th inning. This was Ryan Fernandez early in the season. How long did it take for us to see the guy? It was like 5 games before we saw him throw a pitch in a game. And then you saw him and you're like, whoa, okay, that stuff plays at the big league level. And he started getting into the 6th inning and then the 7th inning. And it was like, okay, well, can he be an 8th inning guy for us? And the answer was yes. That's the same thing that can happen for some of these players that are currently just stalling out at the AAA level. It happens too often for the Cardinals because of the way that they handle these bats. I understand not wanting to rush these guys to the big league level. I don't think you're rushing them any longer. Now it's about you need production. Let's get one of those right-handed bats up. To me, I would be doing that, honestly, today. I would have already made the decision of Gorman's going down. He's going to head to Memphis for a little while and then maybe comes back up when we get to September. Give him 3 weeks down there. And if you're hitting, we'll bring you back up when the rosters expand. But if not, get yourself right, Gorman. Let's see what this can look like. He needs to be somebody that you can rely on for 2025 if they still believe he's going to be a part of the roster in 2025. For Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to get into Ask Us Anything. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, the place to do so is on the text line. We'll get to those coming up at 11:45. But next, T-Bone came in today, and he said something interesting to me. He said, BK, I'm starting to get optimistic about Illinois football. I can't help myself. I've got something in me that is getting excited about the Illini. Which conference is going to be better this year? The Illini's Big Ten or the Missouri Tigers SEC? We'll talk about that and get T-Bone's thoughts on why he's so optimistic about his team coming up next year on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. The Cardinals could not complete the sweep last night as they fell 6-4 in the series finale against the Rays. They had a lead going into the seventh inning, but a 3-run seventh from the Rays ended up putting the Cardinals in a hole they could not climb out of as they lost 6-4. Tonight, the Cardinals hope to bounce back as they started a back-to-back set against the Royals. It'll be Miles Michaelis tonight for the Cardinals going up against Michael Lorenzen for the Royals. First pitch from Kaufman will be at 7:10. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
All right, so if football had a Big Ten versus SEC matchup, the similar way that they have in basketball, T-Bone, The Athletic put together a piece on who would win. Who would be the better conference if they went head-to-head with the best going against the best and the worst in the conference going against the worst? Alongside Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. The 14th place game between these two conferences is one that immediately stuck out to Tanner Hendrickson. He doesn't go to the top. No. He wants to talk about the very bottom, the worst of the potential matchups between the two conferences. He said, Illinois versus Arkansas, no contest. It's the Illini all the way. 14 seed versus 14 seeds in the two respective conferences. According to The Athletic, the Illini would indeed be favored in said matchup. T-Bone, you left reading this article and thinking about your team and having a tight end that's now going to be out for the season who was expected to have a big role. Feeling optimistic about your squad. Why is that? Why are you feeling optimism about the Illinois Fighting Illini right now?
Man, two things. One is, and I liked when they acquired this guy in the transfer portal, Zachary Franklin, who transferred in.
I don't even know who that guy is.
What? I know who that guy is. What are you talking about?
What position does he play?
He's a wide receiver.
Okay.
He came in from Ole Miss. He was kind of buried on the Ole Miss depth chart last year, but he's the active leader in receiving yards in college football. Not from his time at Ole Miss, from his time with UTSA, which the Cardinals have that offensive coordinator, or not the Cardinals, excuse me, the Illini have that offensive coordinator from the team that he was on as a freshman. He, and all the buzz coming out of campus, he looks legit, which I thought, you know what? He fits perfectly for what Illinois is looking for. They're never going to be able to recruit a guy like him, a 4-star wide receiver, to come in and be like the guy that leads the offense. But they can go get that guy on the transfer portal that got buried on a deep Ole Miss team. I think he's going to have a huge year for that offense. And we talked about the running back yesterday that's built like Derrick Henry. If they can run the ball, have this wide receiver on the outside that they can get some stuff to in space, I go, okay, maybe this offense can be okay. Altmaier's got to get him the ball, which is another challenge of its own. But I do like that the addition and everything coming from camp so far sounds encouraging. And then the other reason is they've got this stud Terrence Brooks that they got from the transfer portal at cornerback. 4-star, came in from Texas. That is the formula for the Illini, is can they shut down the passing game on the outside? You think back to that team that was really good 2 years ago. Sure, they had a great running game with Chase Brown, but defensively, what was the thing that you looked at? They could get some pressure on the quarterback, but they were just awesome with Witherspoon on the outside. I think Brooks has a chance to do something special at the cornerback position for them. I think there's a chance that he can become their lockdown guy like Witherspoon was, and then it just opens up everything for them defensively.
What does optimism mean, though? That's great. You're excited about a wide receiver that came in that didn't play last year at Ole Miss, and you're excited about a cornerback that didn't play for Texas. I get that. That makes sense to me. However, you've got KU in week 2. You do have to go to Penn State this year. You play against Michigan. You play against Oregon. So optimistically, 7 wins?
I would say,
like if this team has a good year in 2024, that's probably what you're looking at, is 7-5?
I'd say you hope for 7 wins, maybe 8 if you're feeling a little frisky. But I think, yes, sir.
8 wins? 7 is pretty crazy, honestly.
I felt like I was really pushing for you to get to 7.
Okay,
you want to put money on that,
There's
I will
no
offer
chance
up
that
for
team
you.
is beating Kansas. They're not beating Penn State. They're not beating Michigan. They're not beating Oregon. 4 games off the bat that we don't even have to discuss. It's like 90% going in the other direction. See, so I'm saying you have 8 games to play with, and you think they're going to run the table in those 8 games.
All right, let's go. Eastern Illinois, win.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Central Michigan, win. At Nebraska, maybe a win. I'm going to say toss-up. Purdue, they're really bad. So win. We'll skip the next two. Minnesota, win. Oh, Dad's Day for sure will win. Michigan State at home, win. And then it's at Rutgers, at Northwestern. At Rutgers and Nebraska are the ones that can be the toss-ups for me. And like last year's team,
I'm not putting Nebraska in the automatic win category just yet.
They're building up a program. I don't know if they're there yet.
Illini building up a program, not sure they're there just yet.
No, Brett Bielema, you kidding me? This guy, he knows how to build a team.
All right, that's enough on the Illini. 7-5, optimistically, that's what I think you should be striving for this year if you're an Illinois fan. And if they are 7-5, I think you should feel pretty good about that, depending on how it ends up happening. Get a decent bowl game, live to fight another day. All right. SEC versus Big Ten. T-Bone, last year, I think we both agreed the best conference in the land was actually the Pac-12. RIP, going to miss that conference. But this year, some of the best teams from that conference are now in the Big Ten. USC, UCLA, not the best of them, but then you add in Washington and Oregon as well, heading over to the Big Ten. SEC versus Big Ten matchups. They did this over on The Athletic. I'm curious, who would you give the advantage to in these respective matchups, okay? The number 1 seed for each conference, they had Georgia versus Ohio State. And that matchup, if they were to meet on the field this week, who would you guys favor in that matchup? Georgia versus Ohio State.
I'd go Georgia.
Me too.
And I think Ohio State's got a great roster. But Georgia does as well, and they've got a quarterback that's returning, which is a huge difference maker for me.
100% agree. Texas versus Oregon, who would you favor in that matchup?
I'd go Texas.
I think I would too. I'd give them the slight edge. I do like the Oregon roster with Dylan Gabriel, but I still like, and it goes back to my conversation with Georgia, Quinn Ewers back in that roster again. They've got
they've got a disadvantage.
Steady play. Your hate for
Dylan
Quinn
Gabriel's
Ewers.
Better.
Unbelievable.
He outplayed him last year against Oklahoma. All right, I'm going to say it's a toss-up, if nothing else. Alabama versus Penn State. Grant,
Alabama.
I'll go to the homer here.
Yeah.
Who do you like in this one?
I'll go ahead and give me Bama.
Yeah, I'm with them.
Michigan versus Ole Miss.
I'm going Ole Miss.
I'd probably go Ole Miss too, just because Michigan lost so much to the draft.
All right, LSU versus Iowa. Do we need to talk about it?
LSU.
Iowa will put up 3 points maybe.
Missouri versus USC.
I'd go Missouri. USC, I don't trust to get a stop.
Tennessee versus Wisconsin.
I would go Tennessee, I think. Yeah.
I don't know much about Wisconsin at this point, to be honest, though.
Oklahoma versus Nebraska.
Well, Nebraska's going to lose to Illinois, so Oklahoma.
Yeah, Oklahoma.
Agreed, and I'm not even sure how good Oklahoma is. Texas A&M versus Rutgers.
I think I might actually lean towards Rutgers
They
in that
both
one.
said Rutgers in this piece, which was kind of shocking to me. I feel like this depends on where it's played at. If this is played at Kyle Field, I would favor Texas A&M in this. But the fact that both of the analysts from The Athletic picked Rutgers makes me feel better about Missouri's game that is going to be played down
They were
Texas
trying
A&M.
to pick a wild card there. That's what they were doing.
Rutgers is a team that's interesting because, like, you look at their recruiting of, like, this year and last year, and it's like, oh, wait, Rutgers football is actually, like, starting to do a thing out there in the East Coast?
Auburn versus Washington was their 10-seed matchup, which is really interesting. Washington is going to be a very different team this year. They had a ton of guys go pro. I think I would favor Auburn in this one. They've got a really good offensive line coming back this year. I think Auburn might actually be one of those sneaky teams in the SEC that ends up going like 8-4, but beats somebody that ends up keeping them out of the college football playoff.
Yeah, I would go Auburn as well. There's just so much that was lost from that Washington team that even like saying like they're the 10th best team in the Big Ten, like they're such a wild card from how much they lost. They could end up being worse than that.
SEC versus Big Ten 11 seed, Kentucky versus Maryland. I'm going Kentucky.
I would too.
Yep.
Maryland lost their quarterback as well. They lost the Tagovailoa to his brother.
To his brother. There you go. Tagovailoa. Minnesota versus Florida.
I would
Minnesota.
That'd be a close one, I think.
I think I would lean towards Florida, and like I don't feel good about that because like Billy Napier's probably going to be fired.
100%.
But I would probably lean towards Florida.
All right, so that's the top 12, and then we said Arkansas versus Illinois. You've got Illinois. The last one here, South Carolina versus UCLA. I don't know, push.
Doesn't matter
I
at
guess
that
you
point.
could go South Carolina, but push. The SEC is flat out better this year.
Yeah.
Best conference heading into this season. Last year, I think there was legitimate discussion about, okay, Pac-12 is clearly better. Then what? You could have made a case for the Big Ten because Michigan was so damn good. Penn State had an unbelievable defense. Ohio State was really good. They just couldn't get over the top of Michigan. I thought last year you could have made a case for the Big Ten over the SEC. I don't think that's the case this year, dude. SEC is so good and so deep, and the addition of Texas to the conference as well, I think puts them over the top.
Yeah, I'm with you there because I think when we've looked at the SEC, it feels like this for the last couple of years. it's very top heavy, and then there's just a whole bunch. There's like a top tier, and then there's like a third tier. It didn't really always feel like there was a second tier when you looked at the SEC. This year, you've kind of got that with the addition of Texas.
Absolutely.
You've got the addition of Oklahoma, which, again, I don't think they're going to be a team that threatens for the SEC championship, but they probably fall into that second tier, fringe second tier of, okay, there's them, there's Tennessee. You've got 2-3 teams in that mold there that you look at and go, okay, they may not be a playoff team, but they could probably potentially hand a loss to somebody that's not expecting it, like, I don't know, maybe a Missouri, for example. But you threw trash on the Illini. It was just as fair.
It's easier to do. The Illini are ripe for the taking.
You shouldn't kick him in while he's down, okay?
That's Tanner. He's Grant. I'm VK. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, we're getting to Ask Us Anything coming up next. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. If you guys have any questions, sports or otherwise, go ahead and get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line. This one comes from the 615. Guys, would you trade Donovan to Seattle if they gave you Brian Wu in return? I think Brendan Donovan is so important for this team, man. The reason I wouldn't do it is because I think there are other pieces from this roster that I could trade somewhere and get a similar type of return without having to move on from Brendan Donovan. That is one of the guys that he's not untouchable. That's the wrong word for it. But if I have an alternative, I'm going to go with that alternative. So Nolan Gorman would be one of the guys that I would consider trading. I think I would trade Lars Nootbaar before I trade Brendan Donovan. So
I think I'm with you. I wouldn't pull that trade off just because I know it's a down year for Donovan offensively, but he still gets on base at a pretty good clip. He's hitting for a pretty good average, and most importantly, he can play every position. I'm looking at the positions he's played this year: left, second, third, right, DH. He's covered like 5 of the 9 positions.
If you need him to.
Yeah, exactly. And in a pinch, I know the Cardinals wouldn't want to hear this. In a pinch, he could play shortstop.
Yeah.
I'm with you too. I don't think I would trade Donovan, but I would entertain trading Nootbaar. I've always said that. I think Nootbaar is a good player, but I think his value is more than his value on the field. Like, his value on the trade market is more than his value on the field is. So I would trade Nootbaar for him.
I think he's a good player. I think he's had a down year this year. I think it's fair to say this has not been a good Lars Nootbaar season. I think the problem for the Cardinals, though, is they're running into the too many left-handed bats problem.
Yeah.
And they have too many outfielders, like corner outfielders specifically, because Donovan's primary position at this point is probably the corner outfield. Walker eventually is going to be one of those guys, and now you're running into the issue of, okay, how many guys can play in the corners for us? Burleson, that is the case for him as well. He can play first next year for you, but also can play in the outfield. I think it's going to there's going to come a point in time sooner rather than later where you're going to have to make a call on, of those three guys, Newt, Donovan, and Gorman, you probably keep two of them. And they can ultimately decide who those two are.
All right, bye, Gorman.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 573. Outside of Arenado and Goldschmidt, do you believe that the Cardinals have any potential future MVPs or Hall of Famers on their current roster?
So we're not including Walker then,
Let's
right?
include 40, man. So.
Okay. I'm still going to say, yeah. I think you've got Jordan Walker as a guy that could end up becoming a MVP bat. Hall of Famer, I wouldn't go that far. But a guy that could become maybe an MVP bat, I think Jordan Walker. Seeing what he's done here in the last 10, 15 games in Memphis, starting to see the numbers of old that you really like to see for Walker, where he's hitting for average, getting on base, and he's killing the baseball, slugging,
OPS
high
of
OPS.
near 1,000 in his last 10 games.
I would say he's the one guy that probably falls into this category. I will say that Contreras maybe is an MVP candidate. I mean, if he doesn't get hurt, Alex has said this, and I agree. He doesn't get hurt this year. I think there's a chance you're talking about him being in the MVP conversation.
And not winning it, but at least being in top 5 to 7 consideration.
That's an interesting one. I think you can make a case for Mason Wynn as well if he continues his upward trajectory. But, I mean, in terms of potential, you can't really go against Jordan Walker. If he lives up to his potential, what the organization and what all of baseball really thought he could reach, then, yeah, I think the answer would be Jordan Walker.
That's where I'm at as well. I would also add that it's really hard to be that good.
Yeah.
It's very, very few teams can say we have somebody on our roster right now that we feel good about will or should win an MVP in their career. Very few teams.
And not fair when Ohtani's going to be pitching again as well as hitting 30 bombs next year.
Exactly. And you've got Mookie Betts, who exists.
Freddie Freeman.
You've got Bryce Harper, who exists. It's not going to be easy in the National League to win an MVP for the foreseeable future. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line from the 636. Who's on track right now to have a more successful 5-year stretch, the Cardinals or the Cubs? I would go with the Cardinals in that regard. I'm not high on the Cubs, present or future.
I'm with you. I would say Cardinals. I think you've got the young core kind of in place now. What their ceiling is kind of yet to be known, but you got a lot of young bats in the system, or with the team, excuse me. And then there's some intriguing pitching down in AAA, or not in AAA, sorry, AA with Tink Hintz, Cooper Jerpy, Quinn Matthews was good again in his last start. I can kind of see a little bit of a future for the Cardinals in the next 5 years. I have no idea what the Cubs are doing. Their major league roster stinks. Their minor league system's not very good. I would say Cardinals.
On top of that, the fact that we just talked about that the Cardinals might have a couple of pieces that they can flirt with in trades, they can also bolster their roster when it comes time to wanting to take the next step and become more competitive than what they are now. They can use one of those pieces to go out and make a splash in a trade.
From the 314, would you guys ever consider doing a questions from the audience podcast like Tim does? Would love to hear your non-sports opinions, like having kids, politics, sports opinions in longer form. I would consider doing something like that. I don't know what the specific audience would be for it. And it's a risky move. It's something that Tim does extremely well. He is also a rarity in that capacity. What they do on TMA is just a different format, essentially. It's kind of sports radio, but it's really just talk as a format. So it's very different, and Tim has built an audience in doing so. I've built an audience, maybe, in sports. And so, sometimes there's crossover there and other times there's not. It's a risky decision. Would I consider doing it? Sure, because I have a lot of thoughts in those arenas. But yeah, it's probably something that I wouldn't do anytime in the immediate future, just because you'd like to get yourself a little bit more established in the industry before making a move like that.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
Okay, fair enough. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line for Ask Us Anything. Last one here. Guys, how much have you been paying attention to the Olympics? And two-part question here. What is your favorite event that you've been watching? And did you watch the U.S. men's basketball team yesterday in their game against Serbia?
I gotta be honest, I have not paid that close attention to the Olympics. It's been on, like it was on here in the office or in the studio yesterday, so I was kind of keeping an eye on it. We were watching a little field hockey, we were watching a little basketball, a little track and field. But like if it's not on a TV, I haven't been like saying, okay, I gotta go find the Olympics. But like my favorite event would probably be basketball. That game yesterday, U.S. versus Serbia, was incredible basketball, especially because like, not gonna lie, I kind of saw myself going, oh my gosh, I kind of want to see the U.S. lose. Of how star-studded they are, to see them get upset would be an incredible storyline.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You were rooting for the United States to lose.
I mean, they've been dominating that sport forever in the Olympics.
This might be their last one where they can be this dominant.
Yeah,
that was one of the thoughts that I had yesterday was, I mean, look at the guys that were scoring down the stretch. It was KD, LeBron, and Steph. Those were the three guys that dragged the United States to that win. And Embiid played an unbelievable fourth quarter as well. But those guys are, the three that I just mentioned, very unlikely to be a part of the next Olympic basketball team for the USA. Meanwhile, the rest of the world continues to increase their talent. I think after this Olympics, it's going to be extremely difficult for the United States to win gold on a consistent basis. That's why I was rooting for them so hard yesterday, because, man, it ain't getting easier from here. It's only getting more difficult. I find it really interesting that Jason Tatum was not a part of the game at all, did not play yesterday. I think it was the right call. But I'm very interested in both the current with the U.S. men's team and also what does the future look like? Anthony Edwards has been really good, and he's not on the same level as some of those other guys that I mentioned. 4 years from now, we'll see what that looks like. It's going to be interesting, certainly, to see what the future looks like for this team. But as for the events that I've been watching, I love watching their running events. It's what I enjoy doing. I'm nowhere near any of those guys. It's unbelievable to me what they can do on the track. So I was very interested in the Noah Lyles conversation that took place yesterday online. Sha'Carri Richardson has been somebody that I really enjoy watching. I like seeing personality, and she has a big one. So the what's it called, steeplechase racing stuff has been awesome to watch.
I've seen a couple of those in the office. Those
the
have been
decathlon
fun.
is something that I was fascinated by. So yeah, all that stuff. I've gotten into the Olympics more this year than I have at any point in my past, and I don't know why that is specifically, but I've enjoyed it a lot.
I couldn't be more opposite, to be honest. I've been pretty tuned out to the Olympics. I will say early on, I watched some of the rugby matches. I thought those were highly entertaining.
Sure.
Like, it's just a sport that is like, I could never do this, and it's so impressive what they do. And another thing that I've been seeing a lot, and this is a lot on like social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, like everything that Simone Biles is doing. Just I watch and I'm just like, it's outstanding. Like, I don't understand how a human can do that. It's just amazing. So I find that very impressive too.
I watched the first episode of Hard Knocks last night, and they showed her husband coming overseas to go to Paris to watch the Olympics in person. Just really cool, man. Really cool for them to be willing to allow him to go over, miss a couple of days of training camp. That had to be one of the most unbelievable experiences for both of them to actually be able to be in attendance for something like that. All right, he's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Grant Francis, and I'm Brandon Kiley. 314-399-9646 is the Your Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Coming up next, Nolan Arenado is producing at an extremely high level over the past month or so. Is it sustainable? Is this something that the Cardinals can count on the rest of the way this season? We'll talk about it next here on 101 ESPN.
try, hard hit. Arenado's going to go to second one. Wynn's throw to first, dug out. It's a double play. Hammered fair down the line. He's done it again. Wynn will score. But Arenado with a bullet down the third base line makes it a one-run game. There's a shot up the middle. Arenado is 3 for 3 tonight.
But Nolan Arenado in this ball game. This time it's a breaking ball he goes down and get.
That's what it sounded like last night on Bally Sports Midwest. Another good game for Nolan Arenado. He started to string some of these together now. Last night was a 3 for 3 performance. Had a walk in that one as well, a ribby. Nice night overall for Nolan Arenado. His season average is now up to 273. His OPS is 720, which it is now above league average. T-Bone, you look at what he's done basically over the last month. This is dating back to the July 5th when he had that 4-hit performance against Washington, and we were all like, ooh, is something starting to build here? The answer apparently was yes. It was just more of a slow burn than it was okay, now he's going to go on a heater, 6 home runs in his next 10 games or something crazy like that. Hasn't been the case, but he's consistently improved since that date. Since July 5th, he's batting .320. He has an OPS of 840, which is really good. It's not prime MVP, but it's Alec Burleson type of production that you're getting right now out of Nolan Arenado. And honestly, at this point, I'll take it. I would sign up for that in a heartbeat. And maybe just as importantly, he's looking confident in the field again. That play that he made on the bunt, that's the kind of play that Nolan Arenado makes when he's feeling like himself. He's urgent. He's playing with some urgency. He's making the decisions that 10 players in baseball would make, getting the lead runner out at second and then try for the double play. That being said, how much of this are you believing in? Because some of the underlying numbers, T-Bone, not to downplay what Nolan Arenado has been. The production is real. It matters. It's been good. Underlying numbers, though, the expected batting average is 273 in this stretch. Expected slugging percentage is 100 points lower than it actually is. It's about 380, which is more in line with his overall numbers for the season. Has he actually improved, or nobody likes hearing this? Is there a little bit of batted ball luck that's kind of taking place over the last month?
Yeah, and I hate to be the guy that is kind of being the Debbie Downer because, Arenado is the guy that needs to really get going for this team to really make a push. But I feel like though it's looked better because you're starting to see a little bit more of that exit velo, to me it feels kind of lucky. Because you think of his two last extra base hits. The one last night, bullet down the line. I mean, he crushed that baseball. I was at that game. That thing sounded like it was killed. But also I know, hey, if that ball's 2 feet more to the right, it's right to the third baseman. It's not one of those that's a line drive that's in the gap that falls. It's one that's like a roller down the third base line. And then the other one 2 nights ago on, what's the day? Wednesday. On Wednesday, it was a high chopper that goes over the third baseman for a double. Okay, sure, his slugging percentage is definitely going to rise, and in a smaller sample size, when you look at the last 10, last 100 plate appearances, his slugging percentage is up there. But when you write off those expected numbers where the expected slug is down, the expected batting average is actually lower than what it is, it does make me think that though it has looked better, it's also him running into a little bit better of luck, to where I'm still skeptical if in a two weeks from now, let's say, that we're still going to be talking about, wow, look at Nolan Arenado. He's really figured it out. I'm still hesitant to really just dive in completely and say Nolan Arenado is back.
That's how I am as well. I am happy to see him producing, and that's what matters, dude. Get the production while you can, and if it continues looking the way that it has and the numbers continue to sustain the way that they are, I am all in. That sounds great to me. But based on his current trend lines, it doesn't suggest that what he's doing is sustainable. He's not hitting the ball a lot harder than he was early in the year, though that is starting to tick up. You look at what he's done over the last week. Here are some of the batted ball numbers, T-Bone. 100 miles an hour, 92, 101, 91, 104, 90, 91, 100, 103, 91, 100, 100, and 102. That's all within the last week of play. That is starting to feel more real. The month-long production, though, I don't know how real that was. What we've seen lately feels more like a player that, whether it is health or something has clicked into place with his swing, whatever the reasoning, he's starting to look more like himself over the last week or so. My hope is this means you're going to start seeing some better body language from him overall on the field, whether they're winning or losing, whether he's playing well or poorly, because we've seen that become an issue at times this year. I want to see some more home runs.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing, because in his last 12 games, he has 0 home runs. His most recent home run came on July 26th. That's when I'm going to feel like, all right, that's Arenado. Pull the ball in the air, get it out of the ballpark. When I start seeing that more often, then I will feel like I am confident that the rest of the year, maybe this is something that they can count on. But for right now, given the production, like we said the other day, tell me who you feel comfortable with as your cleanup hitter. As of today, he's the guy. For better or worse, they're going to have to hitch their wagon to Nolan Arenado, because he's hitting now better than what Paul Goldschmidt is. Goldie's the guy that I'm not feeling good about him at all. There's nothing really to point to production-wise. He almost feels like a platoon player. Arenado's starting to get things back on track in a way that makes you feel better about it.
Yeah, and you mentioned the pulling of the ball in the air and getting home runs. What made Arenado such a great player when he is, right, was that. And I think it was Eno Saris, when he was on the show last with us, told us, what is the best batted ball in baseball? It's the pulled fly ball. And that's where Nolan Arenado can become that guy that you talked about, that we played the cut yesterday from Randy on the opening drive of, hey, who's the guy that can get hot and carry the Cardinals to the playoffs? It's Nolan Arenado. And I do agree with that sentiment to an extent, but if he's going to do that, he's going to have to hit home runs, not just be this doubles hitter, which would be nice. It helps out. But the home runs are what can really put up the crooked numbers, which is what this offense
also not a doubles hitter because he has no speed.
Well,
there was a play the other day, I think it was yesterday actually, where he had a single and could have stretched it out for a double, and it was like, no, man, that ain't happening. No. There was another one later in the game. I think it was on a fly ball or something where he could have potentially made it to third, and if it was of the 13 position players, 10 others, they would have made it to third on the play, and Arenado, no chance. He wasn't going to be able to make it. If he had tried to go, I don't think it was him being lazy. I think it was just like, dude, if you end up running to third, you're going to be thrown out because you're too slow. So that's something to take into consideration as well. He needs to hit the ball over the fence because he's not a threat on the bases in any way. He's one of the slowest players on the team.
And yet, he stole a base somehow yesterday.
God bless him. One of the guys that is a threat right now on the bases is Victor Scott. T-Bone, you said something before the show today. You were in attendance last night for the game. You got some of those cheap tickets that were available for Cardinals versus Rays. What are you seeing right now from Victor Scott? What's standing out to you in the second opportunity for him in the big leagues?
To me, he looks like, and I don't know what the ceiling is offensively, but to me, he looks like a big league hitter. You know, watching him in that game last night, man, his 2 singles were not cheap singles. Like, he crushed the baseball. 101 off the bat for his single in the 6th inning, and then 106.5 off the bat for his single in the 4th inning against Spaz, the starter. That's perfect. You know, like we're talking about Nolan Arenado. Why are we critical when he hits like a 100-mile-an-hour single? Well, because he needs to be a power guy. He needs to hit for doubles and needs to hit for home runs. For Victor Scott II, if he's able to get on base by just hitting singles, it just opens so much more up for the Cardinals, especially in that double leadoff role, hitting 9th free at the bottom of the order. He gets on base like he did last night, has the potential to try and steal second base with his speed. His swing looks different. It looks fixed to where I mentioned it the other day when we talked about it. You know, when you look at his at-bats early on in the year, he just kind of looked like he was stuck in the dirt. You know, not a lot of movement with the lower half. Now you've got the lower half where he's got the leg kick, the timing looks better, and he's not getting under the ball as much. Those were missiles last night off of his bat. I think you're seeing a guy that maybe figured it out in the minor leagues, and I understand it's early. It looks different, and it looks kind of major league ready, and if he's hitting for singles, it will open up the running game for him to get that, what you call manufactured slug, to try and steal second base.
I'm going to give you 2 different sets of numbers, okay? The first one.
Is this going to disprove my point?
No, the opposite. The first one is from one portion of Victor Scott's season, and the second one is from another portion of Victor Scott's season. You tell me if you notice a difference between the two, okay? So Victor Scott at one point had an average exit velocity of about 85 miles per hour. And then in another portion of the season, these are his batted balls. 107, 107, 101, 100, 100, 88, and then a couple at 77. The second set of numbers is what he's done since coming back. He's hitting the crap out of the baseball right now. Like, this is what we want to see out of Nolan Arenado. And it's not that every hard hit ball is going to drop for a hit. It's not the case. But you're more likely to get a hit when you hit the ball harder. It's harder to feel that way, especially when you have a runner that has the speed that Victor Scott does. When you hit the ball in play, and whether it's on the ground for him or in the air, I honestly don't even really care with Victor Scott. Just put it in play. And he's starting to do that at a pretty good rate, and he's hitting it hard once again, and the swing looks good. This is a different player than what we saw the first time around. I hope he sustains it, and if he does, hot damn, dude, they might have something with Victor Scott for the stretch run. I've got my fingers crossed because it would be fun as hell to see him become the player that they expected him to be earlier on.
In those numbers that you read off there, like Michael Ciani, single hitter. We all agree with that, right? Ciani didn't hit the ball that hard.
No.
And that's what makes it feels a little bit better for Victor Scott of, yeah, you're right. It's not all about just hitting the ball hard, but it definitely increases your chances of your luck going up of getting a base hit compared to Ciani, who didn't have that much power in his bat.
Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, do the Cardinals have a run in them the way that the Diamondbacks did at this point last season? If you don't remember, this point last year, the Arizona Diamondbacks were 57 and 59. They were under 500, and then they eventually went to the World Series. Now, take out the postseason. Second half of the year, August and September, they went on a run, got to 84 wins, ended up making the playoffs because of it. Can the Cardinals do that? Can they get to 84 to 86 wins, enough to get them to the postseason? We'll talk about that, the pros and the cons about their arguments coming up in about 15 minutes. But next, it is a Friday. That means it is a Fantasy Football Friday here on BK and Ferrario. If you guys have any questions, fantasy-related, big picture, not a keep X or Y. That's not going to help anybody else but you. However, if you have a big picture fantasy football question, go ahead and get them in right now on the Air Comfort Service text line at 314-399-9646, and we'll answer some of those next here on 101 ESPN. right, let's dive into some Fantasy Football Friday questions. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Drafts are either already happening or going to start taking place over the next few weeks. We're going to schedule ours here, I think probably 3 weeks from now is what we're looking at for our 101 ESPN League. If you guys have any questions, big picture, so like looking at middle round targets at a certain position, or hey, I got a top 5 pick in my league, what should I be looking at? Those kinds of things. If you got any questions for those, you want to get a little bit of help, T-Bone's really good at fantasy football. It's super annoying. We'll try to give you some of our best advice here on BK and Ferrario over each of the next few Fridays on the show. Let's start out with this one, T-Bone. Who are some of the middle tier running backs that you're looking to target in the later rounds of the draft? So let's talk about like guys in the 6th round or beyond. So we're looking at the earliest. You're looking at like Alvin Kamara, Gus Edwards, Zach Moss, Tony Pollard, that range and beyond. Who are some of the running backs that you find to be interesting targets this year?
So I really like Zach Moss with Cincinnati. I think he's probably going to get the bulk of the carries over Chase Brown, but he really performed well with the Indianapolis Colts. So I really do like him. Outside of him, maybe Alvin Kamara. Maybe they finally kind of figure out how to utilize him there in New Orleans. It feels like the last year, 2 plus, have been a little bit odd. But I would say like my number one target of that group would be Zach Moss with the Cincinnati Bengals.
A few guys that I really like this year. Is this right? Is David Montgomery going in the 10th round? If that's the case, then, I mean, that's the first guy that I would be taking.
I was going to bring up David Montgomery. I've had him in years past, and he's like the touchdown machine. First for the Bears and last year for the Lions. He's always scoring the touchdowns.
He's going to be in the right place at the right time. He's going to get you all the yards that are there. So that's one guy that I would go with. Couple other players. Jaylen Warren going in the 7th round right now on average in terms of his draft positioning. Pittsburgh Steelers running back, not named Najee Harris. I think he might be better than Najee, to be totally honest with you. He's more explosive. He helps him in the passing game. So especially if you're a PPR team, Jaylen Warren, running back from Pittsburgh, is somebody that I'm definitely targeting this year. Another one, Rico Dowdle. I think there's a really good chance that Rico Dowdle is the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys this season. They brought back Ezekiel Elliott, but beyond Dowdle, they've got nothing at the position right now. And if he ends up being the starting running back there, dude, he's going to get a ton of passes, a ton of catches, and pretty good chances at touchdowns because the Cowboys, they don't have a lot of running back, but they should be a very good offense this year, and touchdowns are a huge portion of the scoring for running back. So Rico Dowdle is another guy that I'm targeting later in rounds as well.
Another one, and I'm a little surprised you didn't bring him up here, is Blake Corum with the Rams.
I love Blake Corum.
Average draft position
Put him on
in
your
that 9th
bench,
round.
see if for the first 6 weeks he gets enough carries, and if not, I mean, he's got contingency value if there's any kind of an issue health-wise with Kyron Williams.
And Williams had, I can't remember exactly what it was. He had some issue during OTAs that he missed time for. Like, he's probably going to end up ultimately missing a couple of games this season. It wouldn't shock me if he gets hurt and misses time. Corum is a guy. And it sounds like they want to get Corum involved in the offense. So you're right. Wait 6 weeks, see what it looks like. But I really do like him that late in the draft.
All right, from the 314, what is your draft strategy if you're doing a super flex league? T-Bone, you won our Superflex League last year. What's your biggest strategy change from a regular league to a Superflex?
Quarterback. That's the biggest change. Last year, now granted, I got lucky. Like, I had the 2nd pick. I went Patrick Mahomes at 2. And then on the turn, because I knew I was getting close to back-to-back picks, you know, I went wide receiver with the 2nd round. And then because I knew I had another pick and 3 picks, I went quarterback again. That's my strategy was to get 2 like really solid quarterbacks that you feel comfortable they're going to put up points and you can kind of pencil them in for like 15 to 20 every week, and then you get that elite stud at wideout. That's what I would do. I don't know how it would have changed if I was like more middle of the draft. My goal probably would not have been to change much, though.
Yeah, that's my biggest thing. You have to get quarterbacks because quarterbacks score so much more than every other position. You want a quarterback starting at your super flex position basically every single week. So draft 2 early, and then honestly get a 3rd. Because if there is an injury for you at the quarterback position, you're going to want that 3rd guy starting. I would take him over like a 3rd running back, for example. And the reason why is because that 3rd running back might not even be starting for you by week 3. You're going to have other running backs that emerge on the waivers. there's going to be very few quarterbacks that emerge on a waiver wire. Most of them will already be drafted in your league, and even if there is, it's probably a guy that's going to come in and not score very many points because they're a backup for a reason for the most part. So a guy like Justin Fields, for example, if he becomes a starter this year, that's going to be a very valuable fantasy football asset. I would want him on my bench early on in the season. That's somebody that you could end up taking, and it wouldn't cost you a ton to have him as your third quarterback.
Yeah, to put that into perspective, I don't remember who I had last year to start because he didn't last very long. He got injured. And so I was riding with Desmond Ritter the rest of the season.
Oof.
So that did not end well for
You'd
me.
rather just have a running back in there.
For sure. And that's what I did most of the time. But my backup quarterback was Desmond Ritter, and because we had so many quarterbacks taken by every other team, that was the best available at quarterback.
Team league,
exactly.
Which does not help.
So there was nobody out there, so I just had Desmond Ritter sitting on my bench half the time. And
interesting because I never even thought about a third quarterback. I was like, okay, I've got Mahomes, I've got Dak, and then I built the rest of my draft after I got those two guys.
You got fortunate that they didn't get hurt, because if one of those two guys gets hurt, you're in a rough spot.
My whole thought process was, if these guys get hurt, I'm just bleeped. So I'm just going to try and build the best roster around those two,
but
and just
the
cross my fingers
opportunity
and hope
cost
he doesn't.
isn't much. Like if you had if you had those same guys this year, you've got Mahomes, you've got Dak Prescott, for example, and you take Justin Fields in the 7th or 8th round, the opportunity cost is your number 3 or number 4 wide receiver. That's not much. So you're not giving up a whole lot. You're not giving up one of those two quarterbacks that you just talked about. You're giving up your 4th wide receiver who probably never would have started a game, or rarely would have started for you anyways. So I think it's worth it. But T-Bone won last year, so take it.
I say no third quarterback.
If you guys were in a 10-team PPR league, what does your strategy look like from the 3rd pick? I want a running back this year early on. If I'm having a top 4 pick or so, I want one of Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, Breece Hall, Saquon, one of those guys. I really want to get them early because running back falls off quickly. There are not a lot of guys. This is the 2nd round running backs this year. Kyron Williams, Travis Etienne, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, and then Isaiah Pacheco. I think it falls off of a cliff. You want one of those top 4 guys, and then it's just a bunch of okay players. So if I'm picking top 5, I'm taking a running back this year.
I'm leaning wide receiver. I always lean wide receiver. I would much rather go with 2 top wide receivers and then settle for those running backs that you just listed.
What do you feel better about? Those running backs that I just listed, Kyron, Etienne, Henry, Jacobs, Pacheco, etc., or Garrett Wilson, Puka Nacua, Deebo Samuel, Cooper Kupp, Drake London, Brandon Ayuk. Those are the 2nd round players currently. I feel much better about the 2nd round wide receivers than I do the 2nd round running backs.
So I would agree with that, but I feel better about a 1st round wide receiver all day, every day over the 1st round running backs. Because 1st round running backs can get hurt.
Get a couple of the wide receivers going, 3rd round wide receivers.
Sure, but
Chris Olave, Jalen Waddle, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr. These guys are studs that are going in the 3rd round. Sure. The running backs in that area,
they're not
Rashad White, James Cook, Joe Mixon. I need to get a running back early because if I don't, man, I'm not feeling good about my options until the 5th or 6th round.
I will always lean wide receiver because it's 5 times. He said PPR, and every time it's a PPR league, it is way easier for a wide receiver to rack up the points than a running back. And I would much rather go with a Justin Jefferson, a Tyreek Hill who can put up serious points.
So can Christian McCaffrey and Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall.
But I'd also
rather go wide out.
I'd also say too that running backs have a more high probability of getting injured.
Yeah,
right. So if you're going durability throughout the season, wide receiver might be the route to go there.
And that's why I'm not drafting them after that. I'm going running back early. My strategy this year, for the most part, if I've got a top 5 pick, I'm taking a running back in the 1st round and then not taking another one until the 6th or 7th round. And then I'm focusing on wide receiver, quarterback, tight end. I want to get an elite tight end this year. I think there's 5 or 6 of them that I feel really good about. And then there's a massive cliff that falls off afterwards. I'm pretty stringent in that regard. I will be okay if I miss out on Tyreek, Jamar, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson in favor of those running backs because I feel like I can get some pretty significant upside from a Deebo Samuel, for example, in the 2nd round. And then in the 3rd round, come back with a Marvin Harrison Jr. And then in the 4th round, get Michael Pittman. I feel good about my receivers in that scenario. And then I can keep coming back with a bunch of different shots at running back because of those injuries that you're talking about. 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th round, etc.
I'm probably going to go wide receiver to start this year just because every time in the past that I've drafted my running back first. I've drafted Nick Chubb, and then he's torn his ACL. And then my other running back was J.K. Dobbins, and then he tears his ACL. And then I just have 0 running backs, and it's just like I have average wide receivers because I went running backs early, and they've all torn their ACLs. So I think I am going to go wide receiver this year.
12-team league, how many running backs do you think would go first round? I mean, McCaffrey, Hall, Robinson?
5?
Probably almost half, yeah.
McCaffrey, Robinson, Hall, Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, and then maybe Jahmyr Gibbs. So probably 5 to 6, depending on your league.
Yeah, I will, depending on where I'm at, I'm probably going to be leaning wide receiver.
Let's say you have the 5th pick, for example.
Okay.
Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson off the board, Tyreek Hill, CeeDee Lamb off the board. So Jamar Chase, Amon-Ra, Justin Jefferson, A.J. Brown are the top receivers, and your running backs are Breece Hall, Saquon, Jonathan Taylor, Jahmyr Gibbs. You're going with one of the receivers?
I'm going with one of the receivers. I'm probably going
Breece Hall there.
Jamar Chase. I know Hall put up decent numbers last year. I wasn't impressed with Breece Hall's game. So I would lean towards one of the receivers. I would probably, of that group, I would either go Jamar Chase or Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Really?
The reason I'm avoiding Justin Jefferson is his quarterback situation.
That makes sense.
I still think he's going to get the ball a ton, but it does scare me enough to back away a little bit.
You go that route in the 2nd round. You're picking 5th, so you're getting Isaiah Pacheco's off the board, Josh Jacobs off the board, Derrick Henry off the board. Your top running backs available are Rashad White, James Cook. Top receivers available are Cooper Kupp, Drake London, Brandon Ayuk, Chris Olave. You going receiver again?
Probably going wide up. I'm probably loading up on wide up because, I think those two guys.
Now you're in the 3rd round. Your top running backs available are Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Kenneth Walker. Top receivers available are Mike Evans, Marvin Harrison Jr., DJ Moore, Devontae Adams.
I think at that point I'm probably in the running back room, and I'm probably going.
So you're reaching now.
Now it's, who'd you say, Montgomery,
Walker, Mixon, Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I would probably go.
And I'm sticking wide receiver, and this is why I'm going running back
early.
Because once you go through it and you're like, okay, I'm not feeling good about the running backs in the 2nd round. I'm not feeling good about the running backs in the 3rd round.
Second round is where, and the reason I would lean wide out in the 1st round is that 2nd round scenario you played out. It didn't go in my favor, so my draft strategy I'm trying to alter on the fly. My strategy was I'm going to get Pacheco or one of those other guys you said in the 2nd round. That was my strategy, and that's where it is. Okay, now I've got to pivot, but I'm okay being like, hey, I've got 2 wide receivers that I know are going to put up points. I've got a quarterback that's going to put up points. And my goal, by the way, also to get a tight end that's going to put up points. If my running back room, I'm getting 20 points from those 2 guys, I'm going to bet my wide receivers are going to outproduce your guys, and I'm going to go beat you head-to-head.
Last thing here. This is my first year doing an auction draft. This comes from the 314. Any drafting strategy suggestions?
Is all you. I've never done an auction draft.
I love auctions. If I could exclusively do auctions, I would. I think it's so much better because if you go into a snake draft format, you pretty much know how everything's going to go based upon where you pick, right? Now, it could change depending on which draft you're in, who's in the room.
When I'm taking all wideouts in the first 3 rounds, there's going to be running backs for you.
It can change, but you kind of know, if you've got the 5th overall pick, you have a pretty good idea of what's going to be available to you and what's not going to be available to you. And that's just based on the luck of the draw. In an auction format, every single player in the league is available to you depending on how you want to allocate your cap, essentially, right? What I personally like to do is go into it with targets. Go into it kind of mapping out, okay, in a best case scenario, this is how my team's going to be constructed, and have a cap on a lot of the top guys of what you're willing to spend for them. So that way you know going in, okay, I'm willing to go up to this dollar figure for CeeDee Lamb. I want 2 elite wide receivers and I'm going to build from there. Or I want 2 elite running backs and I'll build from there. And that's one thing that I really try to do is go into it with a specific plan of how I want to construct my roster based on how I'm going to allocate those resources. And each year that could look a little differently depending on what the top of the draft looks like. But I try to get as many top 3 round players as I can on my team, which is typically 4 of them, 5 of them maybe, and then I'll fill it with guys that are later in the draft that I can get for a couple of bucks.
One thing I heard on, because I like to listen to some fantasy podcasts and fantasy radio while I'm in the car, one thing I did hear, and I don't know if you agree with this or not, because again, I've never done an auction draft. This guy said if you're in one that's not a super flex league, 10% of your cap for your quarterback. And that's it. Right. And I felt that sounded right. He said in the super flex, 15.
I think it can depend, though, because if you get an elite quarterback and you feel good about it, If you think Jalen Hurts is just going to have this huge season this year, he's got 2 elite wide receivers, a good tight end that's coming back healthy this year. Saquon is a good guy to be able to dump the ball off to. You think the offense is going to be better, and his tush push is still there. He's going to score a ton of touchdowns. Maybe allocate a little bit more to him, but you've got to have a really strong take on that to be willing to go above that with your budget. He's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Grant Francis. I'm Brandon Kiley. We do this each and every Friday up until the start of the NFL season. It's Fantasy Football Friday on BK and Ferrario. Coming up next, do the Cardinals have a run in them the way that the Diamondbacks did a year ago? We'll talk about that here on 101 ESPN.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. The Cardinals could not complete the sweep last night of the Rays as they fell 6-4. They carried a 2-run lead into the 7th inning, but a 3-run 7th from the Rays put the Cardinals down, a hole they could not get out of as they fell in the season finale with Tampa Bay. Tonight they look to bounce back. They start a 2-game set with the Royals in Kansas City. It'll be Miles Michaelis tonight going up against Michael Lorenzen. Kauffman Stadium, first pitch at 7:10. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
All right, so do the Cardinals have in them what the Diamondbacks did a year ago? No, I'm not talking about getting to the World Series. I'm talking about getting themselves out of a bit of a hole in the playoff standings. With Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis, I'm Brandon Kiley. The 2023 Diamondbacks were 57-59 at this point in the season. According to MLB.com, the Fangraphs projections had them at a 17% chance on this date to make the postseason. Of course, they ended up getting to the World Series. So they very much made the postseason with 84 wins last year. The Cardinals, as of today, have a roughly 19% chance to make it to the postseason. So almost the same as the Diamondbacks did at this point last year. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. T-Bone, the Cardinals are better this year at this point than the Diamondbacks were at this point last year. Do the Cardinals have it in them to go on a run like the Diamondbacks did?
I don't think so. And I think the reason for me, and we talked to Katie Wu about this yesterday, I don't think their rotation's good enough to get them there. I look at their rotation and say it's just fine. I think you need to have like two studs that can lead the charge for you when you're going down the home stretch of a season with your rotation. And honestly, I just don't know if their offense is that good either, by the way. Like we talk about Nolan Arenado and how the numbers tell you he's heating up. Well, we also just told you that when you peek under the hood, it also says he's just kind of running into a little bit better luck. So if the offense is what it has been for most of the season, I don't think that's good enough. And then for me, it's just the rotation. Is the rotation going to be able to go on a bit of a run like you saw the Diamondbacks go on? Because when you look at their team ERA, yeah, it was slightly bloated last year. I mean, they were into like middle of the pack in terms of their starting pitching ERA, but a big reason for that was because it got bloated by a couple guys that made some starts that ended up not performing well, like a Zach Davies, for example. Down the stretch, Zach Gallen was really good for the Arizona Diamondbacks. 3.68 ERA, more than a strikeout per inning, and in his 12 starts. Merrill Kelly, same thing. 3.39 ERA, more than a strikeout per inning. Brandon Pfaadt, though he didn't have luck in wins and losses, he was a 5-and-dive guy and produced a 4.14 ERA, who was pretty solid for them. Or excuse me, as a starter, he was under a 3 ERA. He had one bullpen appearance. Those three guys helped carry Arizona to the postseason last year because they had three guys, sub-4 ERAs, that were able to take the ball and just shove for 5, 6, 7 innings in the home stretch. I don't think the Cardinals rotation can do that. That's why I don't think they can do what the Arizona Diamondbacks did.
I think they can. Like, if you want to say, hey, can they get to 84 wins this year? I think they absolutely can. That would require them to go 25-21 down the stretch. I think they're capable of that. That doesn't require some like crazy run for them the rest of the way. It requires them to basically play what they've been for the majority of the season, slightly above 500 ball. Get a couple of breaks that go your way, play some good defense. Arenado continues his hot stretch. You get maybe Wilson Contreras and Alec Burleson going again. Yeah, you could absolutely go 25-21 the rest of the way. Here's the problem. I don't think that's getting you in. I think the biggest problem for the Cardinals is that it's going to require more for them to get into the postseason this year than it did to get in for the Diamondbacks a year ago. If you could get in with 84 wins, I think they're in play. I think it's going to take 86 to 88 this year. I think the National League wildcard is just better. The Padres and the Diamondbacks are both very likely to get close to 90 wins, I believe, this year. The Mets and the Braves are who you're contending with right now. You're trying to get that third wildcard spot. The Mets would have to win 23 games the rest of the way to get to 84. They would have to go 23-24 the rest of the way. I'd be a little surprised at this point if they don't. At least do that, and you have to beat their record because they have the tiebreaker over you. So you would have to get to 85 wins if they get to 84. If they get to 85 wins, you need to get to 86, and so on, right? The Braves are in free fall. I don't think they're making the playoffs this year. Like, I would bet, I would be shorting their stock. I have been for a while now. They've gone from first in the wild card to fourth in the wild card seemingly overnight. I think it's going to be a tall task. I think the Cardinals do have it in them, though, to win 86 games this year. But it requires them to utilize their roster in a better way. Like, they're going to have to make some moves here. I don't think you can just keep this thing stagnant the way that it has been and expect things to change. That might mean needing to DFA Brandon Crawford. I don't think they're doing it. It might then mean having to option Nolan Gorman and bring up a real right-handed bat. I don't think they're going to do that. So it will take them acting out of character, in my opinion, for them to be able to go on the run that it's going to require to get into the postseason. The other thing that's working against them is the schedule. Here's what they have coming up. Kansas City, no slouch. Cincinnati, that's a series you need to do well in. And then Dodgers, Brewers, Twins, Padres, Yankees, Brewers, Mariners. Dude, if they do go on a run, they will have earned it. Because this schedule it's relentless. Every single team you're going up against basically between now and this time next month is a legitimate playoff threat at the minimum.
And that's why you need your starting rotation to do what we just talked about with what I said Arizona's did. Because you're going to run into good pitching. We've seen it across baseball. We talked about it after the All-Star game. What does good pitching do? It will always shut down good offense. It comes down to the rotation. Does the rotation give you a fighting chance in these games? Like, you need to have outings like you see from Sonny Gray, what you saw in his last two. That needs to continue. Kyle Gibson has to pitch really well. Last night, he had some traffic in and out of the bases. Eric Fetty, like, the experience of Eric Fetty's been okay. We talked about it. He was like, he had good luck in his last start, and it was bad luck in his second start. If the rotation doesn't find a way to go on a bit of a run here, I don't know if you're going to be able to make the playoffs, because I'm with you. I do think it's going to take more wins to get in than it did with Arizona there at 84. But in that stretch that you just talked about, to me, pitching is going to be the key, not so much the offense.
Let's be honest about what it was. It wasn't like this crazy run that they went on pitching-wise. They had three guys that were a sub-4 ERA, which is doable. They had Merrill Kelly, who had a 3.4. They had Zach Gallen, who was a 3.7, and Brandon Pfaadt, who was a 3.9. That was from August 1st until the end of the season last year in the regular season. So it was three guys that really did a lot for them. Otherwise, they had three pitchers that had a 5.6, a 6.1, and a 9.7. So the other thing the Cardinals could do is just, hey, don't have those terrible starts that exist. If you just have two guys that are really good and then three other guys that continue to give you a chance every time they go out there, you probably have a better chance to win more games than what the Diamondbacks did this time last year. But you need at least two at a minimum that have a sub-4 ERA the rest of the way. So, hey, Eric Fetty, it's go time, man. You got to be more of what you were in the last start than what you were in the first start. When you have runners on, you got to get out, wiggle your way out of those situations. Hey, what you've seen from Sonny Gray the last two times that he's been out there, more of that. One of Michaelis, Palante, Gibson need to step up in a meaningful way. If you get that, I think you could do it. Grant, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, and just I looked at the Mets schedule because I was curious what their upcoming schedule is. It's not that bad. They do have some tough series. Like, they've got Baltimore, they've got the Padres, they've got the Diamondbacks, and then in September they have the Phillies. So, like, it's not a necessarily, like, overwhelmingly easy schedule, but they also have the A's. They have the Marlins. Pull up September here. They have the Red Sox, not great. They have the Reds, they got the Blue Jays, they've got the Nationals.
They've got the White Sox. Schedule. Mets are 17th, they're middle of the pack. Cardinals are third. Cardinals have the third most difficult remaining strength of schedule, the most difficult remaining strength of schedule in the National League. So, again, if they do this, if they are to get into the postseason this year, they will have earned it. And they will be battle-tested by all of the teams that they're going up against. You've got series against Cleveland, New York, L.A., Milwaukee. You've got 6 games remaining head-to-head against them, Twins, and San Diego. That's 6 real, legit postseason threats that you're going to be going up against over the course of the next 7 weeks, basically, till the end of the season. That ain't going to be easy. You will have earned every ounce of getting to the postseason this year if you're able to do it. As I look more and more into it and I think about what's around them in the wild card race and what their schedules look like relative to yours, man, it might just be like the best out for the Cardinals to get into the postseason this year remains the division. Like, win your division and get in that way instead of getting that third wild card. But you're 7 games back right now.
And the Brewers are hot.
I don't know that I'm willing to say that they're hot. I think they went up against a Braves team that is imploding.
Yeah, but they were blowing them out.
Correct. I don't know how much of that was them versus how much of that was the Braves are ready for this season to be over right now. We'll find out, right? Because before that, they had lost 2 out of 3 against Washington. They had lost 2 out of 3 against Atlanta. They had lost 2 out of 3, the Brewers I'm talking about, against Miami as well. So they looked like they were on the ropes prior to this series against Atlanta, and then suddenly, boom, explosion offensively. We'll see if that sustains. They've got Cincy, LA, Cleveland, and then St. Louis coming up in their next 4 series. We'll find out exactly what they're made of coming up here very soon. The Cardinals basically need to go 5-1, 6-0 against the Brewers head-to-head to be able to get back into this thing. That's going to be something around that, because the season series ain't easy to come up with, man. That's going to be what it requires for you to be able to get back into the NL Central race.
Easy. Not like they've really looked like that much better. Oh, wait.
You've beaten them, once so far this year?
Yeah, and they keep the crap out of you, and they're like 6 wins against you.
Yeah, if you want the season tiebreaker, I think you have to go 6-0 the rest of the way to be able to get it.
Never tell me the odds, BK. Never tell me the odds.
It's always easy to beat a team 6 straight times, right?
Yeah,
That's what I've heard from everybody. He's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Grant Francis, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up next, we got a treat for you. A special guest is going to join us on 101 ESPN. Let's dive into the junk drawer. I mentioned this prior to the break. We've got a special guest on the line with us. The special guest is a new father, kinda. He's already had 17 kids, but he's the new father to a new baby girl. It's Alex Ferrario joining us live from his own studio at home.
What's up, nerds? What's up, nerds?
How you doing, bud?
Oh, man, just nice to have adult interaction, you know? I've been talking to toddlers a lot these days. I say the word no a lot in my house these days.
Yeah, I've learned a lot about that over the course of the last month or so. Luca has gotten big into... We've got those golf clubs, the plastic golf clubs that we're swinging around the house. Oh, now we've got 2 of them that we're walking around the house with, chasing our dog, looking like we are possessed. And then swings it towards the dog, trying to hit her. Oh, it's a lot of fun, man. Really love it.
Yeah, we're in the so like the newborn stage. Here's the thing: I've learned a lot about myself over these last few days, guys. I've never done hard drugs, unlike BK, who I know is interested in that in the future.
We don't talk about this on the air.
I've never done hard drugs, but what I imagine, apparently. Well, I don't know if I need to, because having 3 kids feels like I'm constantly on speed. Like nonstop. Like it's just an adrenaline nonstop. At no point do you take a breath. At no point. And then when they go to bed, it's like, oh, okay, cool. But then I realized that I have a newborn that needs to feed at 9 o'clock, at 12 o'clock, and 3 o'clock, at 6 o'clock. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So this is life these days.
Yeah, for the next, 3 months, probably.
Yeah, exactly. But, I mean, not a big deal. I mean,
or
look,
the next year, depending on how you guys decide to do sleep training.
Hey, man, both of our kids, I'm knocking on as much as wood as possible right now. Both of our kids, the first two, not the next 15, they all fell asleep and slept through the night at about a month and a half, 2 months. So,
dude.
I know. Either I'm going to get lucky again.
Exactly a year. Luca was like, hey, I sleep through the night now. We're like, yeah.
You are due.
T-Bone just,
you are due, man.
That's what my concern is. I look at Katie all the time. I'm like, yeah, this other shoe's going to drop at some point, right?
You can't go 3 for 3. No chance.
So, out of curiosity, what's the biggest difference between having your second and having your third?
Oh, man. Honestly, I'm going to regret saying this to you guys. It doesn't feel a whole lot different because, we're still in man-to-man coverage. The baby doesn't do anything other than sleep.
That's a good point.
So it's feeding her, which that's probably the hardest thing, is making sure she's getting her bottle and making sure that chaos doesn't ensue with the other two girls. But I would say the toughest part, which I know parents listening know this life, it's finding time to allocate to every kid. Because, before it was you could have one-on-one time with Adelaide, and before it was then one-on-one time with Emma. And now it's one-on-one time becomes two-on-one time, and then you get the baby, and that's probably the toughest part right now is figuring out how to manage our time. But once the baby gets into a little bit better of a routine, then we could get into a little bit of better routine with the kids at nighttime.
How would you say you're holding up right now?
Out of a scale of deeply, darkly depressed to blue season is here.
Yeah.
That's number 10, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh,
I would say
that.
Yeah, you do. Wait till I get back.
3
T-Bone.
kids, 1 not sleeping through the night, and blue season. Woo! 10 a.m.'s going to come up real fast for you, big guy.
Grant and I were just talking off air because, the Blues just decided to do us a great favor and say, hey, second game of the season, here's a 9:30 start. And if that's not too good for you, how about 9 o'clock the next night? But T-Bone, just get ready, man, because I am there's lack of sleep going through my blood system. So Monday, when BK's leaving us once again, like he always does,
I'll be here next Monday. Don't you worry.
Oh, you're not on the morning show?
No,
you always
the next
are?
week after that, I think I am.
I know. He's been adopted by the morning show. It's easy to forget if he's not going to be here.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to be gone basically every Friday for the next month. I've opted out of working Fridays for the next 3 weeks.
That's cool. Well, I've opted out of having children for the rest of my life.
Hey,
so.
You know what?
Yeah.
Good call. You're going to be in zone.
Are you guys done?
You mentioned you're man-to-man. You're going to be zone covered soon.
About this on the air, but
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding me? You know what they say, boys. 3 and done. 3 and done is what I always say.
Is that, are we going to experience a Alex Ferrario takes a day off on a Thursday, Friday into the March Madness season? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
How do they do it in the Michael Jordan meme?
Feels right. Feels like the right moment.
If you're going to opt out of every Friday, I'm just going to opt out of every Monday. Let's just do it this way.
Go.
How's
Let's
your
just
toe?
do it this way. Dude, listen to this. So, Katie's water breaks at home. First of all, let me tell this story because people get a kick out of this. So, August 1st, I guess it was. Katie goes to bed 10:30 at night. I'm sleeping in the basement because, that's life with pregnant women. And I get a text from her at 12:40.
That was certainly a choice to say live on the radio.
Oh, it's fine. She understands it too. I'm not
sure,
going to out her for why, but I'm sleeping on the couch, not because I'm in trouble. So anyway, she texts me she texts me at 12:45, and she's like, "Hey, I think my water just broke." So I go into full panic mode. I'm like, "Oh my God, I got to get to the hospital because the third baby, I've heard it's like a water slide. It's just kids here, and I'm not having a kid in the car." So anyway, I get upstairs and I'm like, okay, it's what your water. She's like, no, my water broke at 12. I fell asleep for 45 minutes and then I realized that it really was broken. So I'm doing 90 down the highway. Side story, I'm excited to talk to adults right now. The toe. So, hasn't been great. I've been trying to keep it clean. And over the last couple of days, I look down and it's okay, I'm still getting the pain. I just assume it was a broken toe. And it's turning purple and blue. And I'm this can't be good. But I didn't think it was infected because I've been taking care of it. So I went to urgent care yesterday, and I'm like, let's just get this looked at because I don't want to lose a toe. The first thing the nurse practitioner says when she walks in, she's like, yeah, that's infected. And I go, infected we're 7 days into infected and I'm losing the toe? or infected like, hey, we're in the front end of it, just take some medicine, it'll be better? She goes, kind of in between. So
Did she say it that casually too?
Oh yeah, total casual. And I'm like, cool. So she's like, well, just take this for 7 days. We'll see how your toe feels, and then after that, we'll reassess. And I'm like, okay, so 7 days from now, if this doesn't work, I'm losing the toe. So
I'm sure
but
you'll
it's the
be
middle
fine,
one,
man. I'm sure you'll be fine.
You don't really need that toe.
Yeah, I've heard the big one's important for stability, making sure, balance. The little toe is just for show. I don't know what the middle toe is, so.
Nothing. You don't need it.
Yeah, so just chop it off.
I'm sure it'll be fine. There's definitely no way that goes poorly for you and that you end up regretting what you're saying right now. No chance.
You know, if Tanner or Grant said that to me, I would feel confident. But the fact that BKO is over here spewing nonsense to me tells me I'm losing the toe within 7 days.
Alex, if you lose that toe, we've got to go from the Ferrario 5 to the Ferrario 4.
I was going to ask you about the Cardinals. We're going to end it on that. Alex, we'll talk to you on Monday, my man. Alex is going to be back in with us. He's going to be doing the show from home next week. Looking forward to it, my man.
Good seeing you guys. I'm glad you guys have killed it this week on the show. Looking forward to getting back in the saddle with you guys on Monday.
Thanks for listening, man. We really appreciate that. That's Alex Ferrario listening from home, as all of you do as well.
Only Tanner, guys. Only Tanner. See you guys.
Thanks, man.
See you, buddy. That's Alex Ferrario. He'll be back in with us on Monday. Looking forward to having him back as a part of the show. Yeah, for now. We'll see how long we keep that up. But for the foreseeable future, I'm kidding. Alex will be back with us permanently, but next week from home. And then after that, he'll be ready to go with us. That is Tanner Hendrickson. He's Grant Francis. I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in 15 minutes, we're going to talk to a guy from the Royals who covers the Royals to explain to us how they figured out this rotation thing. They took their rotation from the Stone Age to very modern analytics-based strikeout stuff seemingly overnight. How can the Cardinals follow that lead? We'll talk about that with a Royals reporter in 15 minutes. But next, do the Cardinals have a pitcher that could legitimately get hot down the stretch? We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. If the Cardinals are going to make this happen in the second half and get into the postseason, they're going to need a couple of pitchers to emerge as sub 3.5 ERAs, basically from here until the rest of the year, with Tanner Hendrickson and Grant Francis on Brandon Kiley. T-Bone, that's not going to be an easy task. You've got KC, Cincinnati, the Dodgers, Milwaukee, Minnesota, San Diego, the Mets, Milwaukee. Those are 8 teams that are coming up that all have at least above average offense that you're going to be going up against. In Cincinnati, you're playing at their ballpark, which doesn't make that an easier task by any stretch. Does this team, in your opinion, have somebody or multiple somebodies that can emerge as 3.5 or below types of ERAs the rest of the season? Because we just talked about the Diamondbacks a couple of segments ago. They had 3 guys that were sub 4, one of which was a sub 3.5 the rest of the way from this point till the end of the season. Who on the Cardinals do you think is capable of that?
I think the only guy capable of it is Sonny Gray. And even him, I'm a little skeptical to say, because for me, there's just been too much inconsistency in his game. His numbers are great, like a 3.65 ERA. He's got strikeout stuff.
So then you would say that he's capable of doing that.
I think he is capable of it, but because he's had these ebbs and flows this season, I'm not like 100% like Sonny Gray's going to do this for the St. Louis Cardinals.
Sure. I mean, I'm not 100% sure of anything in baseball, but yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I think Sonny Gray's the one guy that can do it because he's got the stuff. If he finds his motivation or whatever it was he was saying was his excuse when he was going through the downturn, then sure, Sonny Gray is that guy for the Cardinals. He's got the stuff like a Merrill Kelly, like a Zach Gallen, but to me, he's the only one that's capable of it. I don't think Kyle Gibson's got the stuff to do it. I don't think Eric Fetty's got the stuff to do it.
Let's stick with that for a second. Have you looked at Eric Fetty's ERA on the season, in which he has made 23 starts so far?
It's like 3.4, I think, now.
3.28. So why isn't he capable of having a 3.5 ERA from now until the end of the year if so far this year he's made 23 starts, and in those 23 starts he has a sub 3.3 ERA on the year?
Because I think, as we saw with Eric Fetty in his first 2 starts as a Cardinal, I don't see the stuff that has him as that. I think he was exceeding what the expectation is of Eric Fetty. And like you can say, well, can he do that again? No, I think it's going to normalize. I think you're going to see it normalize back to where he probably will finish the season around a 3.75, 4 ERA type of guy. He's like slightly better Kyle Gibson. And Kyle Gibson's going to be a guy that's going to finish this season with like a 4.42 ERA. I don't see Eric Fetty being that guy. I think you saw his hot stretch early on in this season, and he's really going to normalize. I mean, we both just came out of his last start, and we went on air and went, oh, what'd you think of his first 2 starts? And we're both like, it's fine. But I think for a guy to have a sub 3.5 ERA, you have to be great. And to do that for a 2-month stretch, you have to have the stuff that can play up and do it. I just don't know if he does.
I think he does, because like we've seen it. We saw for his first 23 starts where he had a sub 3.5 ERA. I don't know if expect that is a fair thing to say about Eric Fetty, but if this team's going to make the playoffs, he's going to be one of them. He's going to be one of the guys, and he's capable of it. I mean, you look at what he did, for example, in the month of May, right? So in May, he had a 4-start stretch where he ended up going at least 6 innings and 4 consecutive starts and gave up a total of 5 earned runs in those 4 starts. That's the kind of thing that you need. Like, you're going to need somebody that gives you a 5-start stretch of going 6+ innings and giving up 2 earned runs or fewer in all of them. You're probably going to need that out of Sonny Gray. Probably going to need that out of Eric Fetty. And then the other guy that I would say is, like, I think Kyle Gibson's also capable of that. I think we're underselling a bit what Kyle Gibson is capable of accomplishing. He is not a perfect starting pitcher at all. However, you look at what he did from mid-April until the end of May, and over the course of 8 starts, he had 7 of them where he gave up 2 earned runs or fewer. He ended up in that stretch having a 2.5 ERA. Now, some of that was batted ball luck. That's baseball, man. Like last night, I think there was some bad batted ball luck for the Cardinals. That's going to happen for and against the Cardinals the rest of the way. Kyle Gibson, capable of this. I think the Cardinals do have 3 starters that can do something like this. If you want to talk about, do they have guys that can get them through a postseason when you're going up against star-studded lineups every night? They're specifically game planning for you in a way that sometimes doesn't happen as much in the regular season. Fair. Maybe not. But for the rest of the way, can they have 3 starters give them a 3.7 ERA or below? I wouldn't bet on it, but yes, they do have 3 guys that are capable of doing exactly that.
Yeah, I'm just skeptical of having 3 guys that will do that because I think you've seen Kyle Gibson kind of normalize to the norm, and we've talked about Gibson in his history is not a second-half pitcher. He has very much struggled in the second half throughout his career. Eric Fetty, like, I understand he's a different pitcher. I still don't know if we really fully understand what he is at the big league level since coming back from
this year. I know he is this year a really good starter. I can't tell you what he's going to be next year when teams have more tape on him. They've seen him for a full season. They've got an off season of scouting him to find out what are some of the tells. What are some of the things that we can exploit in his arsenal? I don't know. That's a big story for the Cardinals next season. But for right now, the guy that we know him to be so far in 2024, right now I know him to be a really good starter that can have a sub 3.5 ERA. And that's what the Cardinals need. So as we go down the stretch here, I think the other thing that I would add in this is he's got better defense behind him now than he had in Chicago. And he's got a ballpark that I think his stuff should play well at. The Cardinals, Busch Stadium plays more as a pitcher's park than a hitter's park, so I would expect some pretty good numbers for him here at Busch Stadium as well. Those would be the 2 factors that I would say, like, even if there is some regression to the mean for him, I would expect him to pitch a little better here than maybe some of the fielding independent numbers would indicate.
Yeah, that's a fair critique now that he's got a better defense around him in a ballpark that should be more pitcher-friendly than what Chicago White Sox Stadium is. I don't know. Maybe it is me having the thought in the back of my head of what he was in Washington, though I tried to get rid of it. I just don't. Seeing his first 2 starts, we talked about this after his last start. Seeing the first 2 starts, I don't know how he can be that guy that is sub 3.7 because to me it wasn't all that impressive.
I just think that's completely overlooking what he's been all year. I think that's unfair to him.
But I said this at the same time, like seeing him pitch for
it's like
2
saying
starts.
Jake Neighbors isn't a guy that can score 25 goals when he has 20 goals so far on the year. Well, he can be. We have to adjust our priors. Like our priors going into the season where that Jake Neighbors wasn't going to be that guy. And then when he proves to you that he is, I think eventually we have to be like, okay, you know what? Jake Neighbors better than I expected him to be this year.
Aren't we still at the same spot in Jake Neighbors of like we don't know what is and isn't his ceiling?
Correct, because
and that's where I am with Eric Fetty.
And that's where I'm for next year for Eric Fetty.
I
but
think
in
it still
the
holds
season,
here.
I don't think that's fair. I think last year in the season, we've got to adjust how we view Jake Neighbors because he's already racked up a bunch of goals towards that goal of being a 25-goal scorer. I think the same thing is true for Fetty this year of, hey, man, I came into the season not expecting Eric Fetty to be this. And then when he becomes it, I have to change my expectations. And now for the rest of the season, is he capable of being a guy that you could put up his numbers against number 2 or 3 starters from other contending teams, and you could say, you know what, strip away the names, the numbers match what you would expect for that. Yeah, I would say that's absolutely the case for Eric Fetty because he's shown that all season long. 23 starts is a good enough sample size at this point that I think it's representative of who he is right now as a starting pitcher.
Yeah, I understand that. For me, the eye test tells me he's not going to be that guy. The eye test from the first 2 starts says, and I mentioned this after that start against, was it Tampa Bay? Was that who he just made his last start against? Yeah, against Tampa Bay. He could have easily had the same outcome as he did in that Cubs game, where he has that one inning where instead of 1 run allowed, it ends up being like 4 because there's so much traffic on base, and he gets some of that batted ball luck to his advantage. And that's why I say, like, I don't know. For me, the eye test tells me, can he do it? Yeah, I think it's fair to say yes. But my gut tells me no, he will not be that guy for the Cardinals.
And it can't just be those 2. They've got to have other guys that go out there and give you quality starts as well. Michaelis and Palante are the 2 guys that are going up against the Kansas City Royals in the next 2 days. That's not an offense that you want a bunch of guys that are pitching to contact against. The Royals are not a great offense, but they do have a few guys at the top of the lineup that can absolutely do damage against you. I don't want to see what it's going to look like for Michaelis going up against Bobby Witt Jr. and Salvador Perez. It's not going to be a good matchup for him. Palante, this is a lineup that has mostly their best hitters are right-handed. That's not a particularly great matchup for him either. So this is one where you're going to need the offense to come alive. So it's got to be Sonny Gray, Eric Fetty, Kyle Gibson giving you quality starts, and the offense has got to be something that helps you out in a series like this going up against the Royals. Michael Lorenzen is fine. Cardinals have done pretty well against him at times in the past. Michael Wacha on Saturday. Last time, I believe he had a really good start against the Royals, if I remember correctly. Offense is going to have to come alive in this series against the Royals to to say the least. Coming up in about 15 minutes or so, we're going to have a game of One's Gotta Go. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. You give us 4 different options. We'll tell you which one's got to go. But next, we're going to talk to a Royals reporter, get their perspective on this series. But more importantly, how did the Royals go from a middling to bad rotation a year ago to a damn good one overnight this season? What did they do internally, organizationally, to fix their pitching problems? We'll talk to him, see if the Cardinals can emulate some of that next year on 101 ESPN. All right, welcome back in. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. Tanner Hendrickson in for Alex today. Alex going to be back in with us on Monday. Right now, we're going out to the 101 ESPN hotline to be joined by one of my friends, a guy that covers the Kansas City Royals. He's David Lesky joining us here on the show. You can follow him on Twitter at DBLesky. David, appreciate the time as always, my man. Let's talk a little bit about the pitching because that's really been the story of the Royals season. It's been, to a lesser degree, the story of the Cardinal season over the last few years because they haven't had enough of it. David, what changed? How did the Royals go from a team that had a terrible rotation to a team that has one of the better rotations in the American League this year?
Well, I mean, some of it's pretty simple, right? They went out and they identified mid-level free agents who they could slot in, Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha, and Lugo has not pitched like a mid-level free agent, but that's what he was in December when he was signed. They got Cole Reagans in a deal for Aroldis Chapman last year, and Brady Singer's improved, which kind of speaks to the process, I think, of the organization pitching-wise. When they fired Cal Eldred after the 2022 season, they went out and they basically took I don't know how important Brian Sweeney actually was in Cleveland, but a lot of people I talked to said that he was kind of the glue in that pitching organization, which I don't think is entirely true. They're still pitching well. I mean, the starting rotation's struggling for them this year, but Sweeney knows what he's doing. They went and got Zach Bowe from Minnesota. The Twins know what they're doing with pitching too. They if you look, they're always quality, and so they went to two organizations that seem to know what they're doing, and they got guys who can help people. And the biggest thing, and we were texting about this earlier, I know, but the biggest thing that organizations can do sometimes is just get out of the way. Because if you go back to, 2022, sure, but even years and years before that for the Royals, the philosophy was, this is how we pitch. I don't care what you throw. This is how we pitch in the Royals organization. And it doesn't work because just like you're different than your best friend and then your uncle or whatever, everybody is different. And so they need to be treated differently. And so, the Royals now, what they do is they actually develop individual pitching plans, which is like the dumbest thing in the world that they didn't do before. But they do it now, and it's working. The results are there. It's not there for everybody. It's not a perfect solution. I mean, there's still strides to take, but that's the difference now.
And David, you mentioned Cole Reagans as the guy that's kind of leading the charge for them. They acquired him last year at the trade deadline for Aroldis Chapman, and then there was a throw-in outfield prospect as well. Why specifically did they target Cole Reagans? Because he's the number one in that rotation now.
Yeah, one of the things that the Royals have done with trade targets in particular, and a little bit, I guess, free agency too now, but if you look at guys like Cole Reagans, James McArthur, who's struggling out of the bullpen 100%, but he looked the part for a while, and I'm not convinced he won't look the part again. They look at guys who have characteristics, and I don't know if it's necessarily always the slider, but it has been the slider with a lot of their acquisitions. They look at guys who have the type of characteristics that allow for an above-average or better slider, and they're really good at adding that pitch. Cole Reagans did not throw a slider with the Rangers. I think he did, but it wasn't often, and it's much better now. McArthur added a slider after they got him from the Phillies. Michael Wacha added a slider this season. I mean, there was one start he didn't throw it. The next start he threw like 11, and then I think it was like 3 or 4 starts later, he threw that pitch more than any other pitch, which that's a testament to Wacha for sure. And I mean, Cardinals fans know all about Wacha, but it's also part of the Royals' MO is that they have become really good at incorporating sliders into repertoires, and I think that it's more than that, obviously, right? Cole Reagans his velocity was way up last season. He went from 91, 93 in 2022 to he was 96 out of the bullpen, and I think the Royals really believed that he could stay there out of the rotation, and he did, which they targeted stuff for sure, but I really think when they look at these guys, they look at pitchers who, one, I think can add a slider. I think that's a really big thing for them. But two, are also adaptable because you add in, look at Seth Lugo. He got 9 pitches. And I think he had 7 when the season started. Might have been 6 even, but so he's just adding 2 throughout the season. It's just, it's ridiculous what he does. He's really fun to watch, but that's kind of, I believe, and people have said this to me, and they're never going to come right out and say, this is our philosophy. Please tell the world. But people in the organization I've talked to have said this, that they like guys who they can add a slider to and are versatile and can make adjustments on the fly, which kind of makes Brady Singer interesting, but because he doesn't like to make changes. But for the most part, that's what they're looking for. And yeah, so if you ever think, I wonder who the Royals are going to go after next, which I'm sure you guys do every day.
Yeah, that's actually our job here.
Right, exactly. Look at pitchers who add pitches and throw different pitches, and you're probably going to find who the Royals might want.
David Lesky is our guest. He covers the Royals for Inside the Crown. You can follow him on Twitter if you're curious about the Kansas City Royals leading into this series. At DB Lesky is where you can find him. David, is there anything other organizations can learn from the way that the Royals have gone about this? Like, for example, if there was a team across the state line, for example, that maybe wears the birds on the bat, what could they learn from what the Royals have done to modernize their pitching approach, in your opinion?
Well, I think the big thing, like I said, get out of the way. Right, it's pitching development is very individualized, and not even just development, but I mean going after the right people in free agency and through trades. One size does not fit all. I don't know that that's what the Cardinals are doing. You would know better than that, obviously. They might be. But
in the past, they have. I think they're getting better at it right now. But they added Chaim Bloom to the front office basically because of this. But in the past, it's been very much hey, we're a sinker slider organization. We get ground balls. That's the way that you operate. But I think it's starting to get a little better.
Which doesn't work. I mean, it does work. It works for some guys. And you can find seasons with success. I mean, the Cardinals have had plenty of seasons with success on the pitching side with that approach. But I don't know that it's sustainable because pitchers are so different. Every pitcher, they're like snowflakes. They're all different. And it's just important, I think. I mean, I always think about like a leader when somebody asks you what's your leadership style, the answer should not be, oh, I do this. No, the answer is you do what your people need. And when you're teaching pitching, when you're developing pitching, when you're signing pitchers, the answer is not, oh, this is what we do. No, the answer is, what do you do? And let's tailor our program around that to make that better. And that's the thing the Royals have changed to. And there's plenty of ground to cover still. They are not at the top 100%. I would never even claim they were. I don't think they're top third. They may be top half, but just getting out of that mindset of what's good for this person is good for everybody else, I think has made a huge difference. And I think that if teams are still doing that, they're going to continue to fall behind.
And David, you mentioned this philosophy of looking for guys for sliders. And does this all go through from Major League Baseball to the AAA, AA, high A, low A? And do they have everything that they need at those minor league levels in the Royal system? Because that is something that the Cardinals in the past have. Major League Baseball teams doing this, and then they're slowly trying to implement it down to the minor league level.
Yeah, it's a top-down approach. I mean, when they fired Cal Eldred and they were looking for a new pitching coach, it didn't end up happening exactly. Well, title-wise didn't happen, but I was told they were looking for basically a director of pitching and a pitching coach. What they ended up doing was hiring Brian Sweeney as the pitching coach and Zach Bove as the assistant pitching coach. And I think it still worked in a de facto way, but Brian Sweeney and Bove and oh my God, I'm blanking on his name now, in the minor league system for the Royals, which it'll come to me as soon as we hang up, I'm sure. But they all work together in a way that wasn't there before. There was a disconnect in the organization with Cal Eldred at the top. And so everything does stem from Brian Sweeney. Everything is, and Bove, and Mitch Stetter out of the bullpen too. He's a bullpen coach. Those values that they put in are what they try to work with throughout the organization. And the other thing, too, the technology wasn't always there before. And now it is. They added, I can't remember the exact number. I think they went from 12 to 18 on the analytical staff, which put them from the bottom of the middle third in baseball to the top third in baseball in terms of analytics department size. And a lot of that has been devoted toward mostly right now the lower level of the minors, but I think it's pretty versatile, and if needed, it can, those guys can move around to different levels. But it all starts at the top, and there's a cohesive philosophy now that just wasn't there before.
It'd be nice if the Cardinals could follow suit with the whole technology thing. Maybe getting a pitching lab down in spring training would be helpful for them. One day,
and the Royals aren't there. They don't have that yet either. So they're not there. They're getting there.
Yeah, the Cardinals are not there or getting there just yet. they're hoping that they're. I think it was on a basketball draft a few years ago. There was a basketball player that they said he's probably 2 years away from being 2 years away. The Cardinals' pitching development is right now 2 years away from being 2 years away.
That's a great phrase. I love it.
It's the best. David, appreciate the time as always, man. Looking forward to this series between the Cardinals and the Royals. Talk with you again soon, my man. Enjoy this one.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
You got it. That's David Lesky. You can find his work over at Inside the Crown. You can follow him on Twitter if you'd like to follow along with the Royal side of this series at DB Lesky. He's one of the best baseball writers in the business, in my opinion. Very connected with the Kansas City Royals organization. Does a really good job. This is a big series for both teams. The Royals fighting for their playoff lives right now. They went out into the offseason and they signed a bunch of dudes that can come in and stabilize, especially their rotation, but they did the same thing on the hitting side of things as well. They invested in this team because A, they want to get a new downtown ballpark, and B, they didn't want to be an embarrassment again this year. And now they're right in the playoff mix with a MVP candidate on their roster in Bobby Witt Jr. So these games are super meaningful for them. And they are super meaningful for the Cardinals as well. This is a massive series in Kansas City this weekend. It'll be Michaelis versus Lorenzen tonight, and then Palante versus Waka tomorrow. Do you have any quick thoughts on the Cardinals versus the Royals, the pitching development, and where they're at versus where the Cardinals are at currently?
I found it interesting. He said they wanted to target guys with sliders because that was kind of the Cardinals, not so much their rotation, but their bullpen philosophy this offseason.
Yeah.
Their bullpen throws the sliders / sweeper, whatever you want to call it, the most in baseball in terms of the usage rate. And you look at it, and the bullpen for a while had some pretty good swing and miss stuff. When JoJo was at his best, that pitch was really working.
With the rotation too, because Gibson has one, Sonny has one, and now you look at what they did at the deadline in Eric Fetty. That was the new addition to his arsenal, was that sweeper.
So that kind of stood out to me because that was like, okay, the Cardinals, you can see where the Cardinals have some similarity as to what the Royals were kind of targeting then in the offseason. The other one for me, and I asked the question about like their minor leagues down all the way from major league all the way down through, is the kind of the supporting staff that goes into it, making sure that they're on the same page. That's kind of what Dusty Blake was hired to do, was kind of be that guy that is, okay, he's going to help at the big league level, but he's also going to hopefully modernize our approach both here at the big league level and down in the minor leagues. And I remember, I think it was the hitter side. There were hitters or pitchers that were saying we were being told, one thing by our coaching staff was, hey, we need to do this. And then player development would come through and say, no, we still want to pitch to contact. And when he said that was the biggest thing for me, was everybody from Major League Baseball all the way down through their Palm Beach and even their Florida Gulf Coast League team need to have the same philosophy as an organization of here's what we want, here's what we think helps best, and then try and adapt it to the player's need, as like he said what the Royals did.
He's T-Bone. That's Grain on BK. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for One's Gotta Go here on BK and Ferrario.
Grant Francis here with a SportsCenter update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Cardinals could not get the job done completing the sweep last night as they fell to the Rays 6-4. They had a 2-run lead going into the 7th, but the Rays erased that lead with a 3-run 7th. The Cardinals could not come back after that as they fell 6-4 at in the series finale at Busch Stadium last night. They look to bounce back today as they hit the road. Go across the state to Kauffman Stadium to take on the Royals for 2 games tonight and tomorrow. Tonight will be Miles Michaelis on the mound for the Cardinals going up against Michael Lorenzen. First pitch will be at 7:10. I'm Grant Francis. The SportsCenter update's been brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
This is BK and Ferrario. Time now for One's Gotta Go. We offer up the talking points, and you get to pick which one's gotta go on 101 ESPN.
Count that big pen.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for One's Gotta Go. You give us 4 different options. We will tell you which one's gotta go. We'll start with this one from the 314. One's Gotta Go Basketball Edition. Gold medal in the Olympics. NBA's Most Valuable Player Award. An NBA championship or a college basketball championship. Which one's gotta go for you? If you were personally able to accomplish any of those feats, which one would have to go?
That's a good one. So I think gold medal stays because it only happens once every 4 years. So having a gold medal would be really cool. I think the college basketball
you also have
one.
to be a top 15 player in the world to even be eligible.
Exactly. College basketball for me stays because then you're like a legend on campus for life. Even probably if you were the best player on that team with a statue outside the arena. And it comes down to MVP or team championship. I would say the team championship goes, I think, because I wouldn't want to say I was the best player in one season at the highest level. So I can't believe I'm saying this. I think the NBA championship would have to go for me.
I'd get rid of the MVP. I'm more of a team guy. I'd rather see the team have success. So
easy thing to say publicly.
I know that's not an NBA thing to do, but I'm going to go with the team success over the
I think I would
MVP.
get rid of the college basketball championship.
No.
I think so.
The passion in college basketball is unmatched.
I mean, you're probably there for 1 year.
Still, though. Like all the hype around the tournament.
It's either NBA or college basketball championship. Winning the MVP would be unbelievable. You're literally remembered in history. That season, you were the story of that season. For the rest of your life, you will always have that year. Like Paul Goldschmidt didn't end up winning what he wanted to here in St. Louis, and so accordingly, he will not be remembered as fondly as the people that ended up winning the title, right? But in 2021, 22, whatever it was,
he won MVP.
He was the best player in the world in the National League. That means something. So I would keep the MVP. I think I would get rid of the college basketball. Yeah. After thinking even more about it, I think I would get rid of the NCAA title because you're only there probably for 1 year. That would be the one.
I just think you're more, because college sports, I feel like there's more of a, I don't know if following's the right word, but there's so much more, I think, passion involved in it than there is at the pro level, especially at basketball.
That's where I was going too.
I think there's some truth to that. But rings are the things that last forever. Like, you get to a Final Four but don't win the title, you can still be remembered incredibly fondly at the collegiate level.
That's fair.
You get to an Eastern Conference Finals, a Western Conference Finals, man, people don't care. You either get the ring or you lost. That's it.
To that point, I think the furthest he got, I don't think he got to the Sweet 16 with Illinois basketball, and he's got his jersey in the rafters.
He'll forever be a legend because of that. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. One's got to go. Opponents for the Blues when they next host a Winter Classic. The Stars, the Avs, the Predators, or the Red Wings? Stars, Avs, or Predators, or Red Wings?
Oh, this is going to be an unpopular answer here. I would say Red Wings. To me, it's not much of a rivalry anymore. Anybody that's like, I hate the Red Wings, well, okay, I guess you're probably just older than me, and that's why you hate the Red Wings, because I have no hate of Detroit. I would much rather see them play Colorado, or Nashville or the Dallas Stars. Detroit, the whole like now they're in the East. Who cares?
I think if you ask an older fan that experienced the hatred of the rivalry of Blues and Red Wings whenever the Red Wings were in the Central, I don't think they would get rid of the Red Wings, but that hasn't really been around for me while I've been a fan. So I think I'm with you, T-Bone. I think I would get rid of the Red Wings because with the other three teams, you have that element of rivalry and hatred, which makes it a lot more fun. With the Red Wings, now that they're in the Eastern Conference, for me, it's just like, nah, every time they meet.
And those three teams in the West are good.
Yeah, well, they might not be in the future, though, whenever
Sure.
the hypothetical would happen.
People aren't going to like this either. I'd probably get rid of the Stars. That's the series that has the least amount of juice for me. Like, you go up against the Avs, you're going up against McKinnon. That's one of the best players in the world. And there was a playoff series where there was a real rivalry that started between the two, right? Like, because of what happened with Jordan Binnington. The Predators, it's the Nashville, St. Louis thing. You've got that whole, sure. Red Wings has the history. I know there's some history with the Stars. It's just not, to me, at the same level as these other teams, especially given how many of the players that were a part of it are now no longer here on both sides. So I'd say the Stars for me would be the one that I would get rid of personally.
The only thing fun about the Stars is that the Blues have taken so much from them over the past years that a Winter Classic would be adding to it.
Still a player. I don't know if the city still feels this way, but like Jamie Benn was a really hated star for a while there.
That's a good one. All right. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. One's got to go. Household items. Your bed, your toilets, your refrigerator, or your dryer. Bed, toilet, refrigerator, or dryer.
Easy. Be drier.
What? How are you going to dry your
clothes
in the
laundromat.
winter?
Just go to the laundromat.
That's the one that you can most easily replace.
See, the whole like go to the laundromat thing. As a guy that lives in an apartment, let me tell you what I don't like doing: going to the laundromat. I think I've said this before, and people call me crazy for it. Bed, refrigerator, and dryer were the other three, correct?
Yep.
Those three stay. It's the toilet. I'll go out in the woods if I have to, man. The dryer, I don't want to drive somewhere to go dry my clothes. The refrigerator, well, that's a need.
Yeah, but you don't do laundry
and I'm sleeping
every
on
day.
a bed. Sure, I don't care. I hate. Like, I need to do laundry tonight at some point. I can't tell you how much I'm dreading driving just to the place and making sure that okay, there's at least one of these available for me. Nah, I'll just go to the bathroom in the woods.
Okay, well, when it's a blizzard outside and
fine.
All right.
I would do the dryer. I think that one's easy. I don't think it's even close. That came from the YouTube chat, by the way.
Toilet is crazy.
No, you can go your business outside.
Yeah, I feel like you got to go number one. That is not hard. Like, yeah, we can all do that, right?
I didn't say we're getting rid of toilet paper. I'm not, wiping with a leaf.
I mean, you're still doing that outside. It's not like you do that once a month. Like, do you have this massive backyard where it's just super easy? Like, come on, man.
People see me walk out of my backyard. Oh, there goes T-Bone again, doing his daily dues.
It is certainly a choice.
All because you didn't want to go to the laundromat.
Yeah. Apparently I'm biased because I have to go to the laundromat, and I dread it every single freaking time.
Somebody said one of the members of the TMA show hangs their underwear outside of his house anyways. I don't know the backstory on that. That is certainly a choice that you could make.
I wouldn't do that.
You getting a clothesline? You could do a clothesline for your clothes as well. If you want to,
we had that when I was growing up.
Like this time of the year, it'd be great.
In the summer, we had that when I was growing up, and I can always remember my mom saying, "Now, if you're upstairs and you see it raining, you go get the clothes." Yes, Mom.
You got it. Only Illinois.
Yeah.
Coming up next, let's hit the BK and Ferrario Rewind, and we're going to give you a chance to win a pair of tickets to see Green Day with special guest Rancid. It's your last opportunity here on BK and Ferrario. Fastlane will have one coming up for you later on today. We'll give you ours next here on 101 ESPN. If you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. We talked a little bit about the Cardinals bullpen from last night. Also, some decisions that could be coming for the Cardinals on their roster. What is the plan with the bullpen? What is the plan with Nolan Gorman? You can find our extended thoughts on all of that on the podcast page. T-Bone also explained why he's excited about Illini football this year. He said 8 wins or bust. And then we went through the schedule. I think we knocked him down to 7. And I think realistically he's feeling like 6.
Yeah.
But you can find all of that on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. And right now, you're going to win a pair of tickets if you are texter number 101 at 314-399-9646 with the correct answer to the following question to see Green Day with special guest Rancid. That is taking place next Thursday, August the 15th at Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Question today, earlier today, Alex Ferrario joined us for a special segment. He told us about how things are going at home right now that he has 27 kids that are running around the house. He also explained how he's feeling because he has an infection. If you are texter number 101 and you can tell us where that infection currently is for him, what is infected for Alex Ferrario? If you have the correct answer and you're texter number 101, you're getting the pair of tickets to see Green Day next Thursday night at the Hollywood Casino Amphitheater. Tickets on sale. You can check out the details at 101ESPN.com. All right, T-Bone, to finish things out today in the BK and Ferrario Rewind, obviously a tough loss last night, but the Cardinals were able to win 2 out of 3 against the Tampa Bay Rays. They mostly got the job done despite what was a very frustrating night last night for them. They've got a 2-game series in Kansas City over the weekend. It's that weird 2-game series where they don't play a game on Sunday, off day, and then go into the Monday game against Cincinnati. How are you feeling going into this series? Michaelis Palante on the mound. You're going up against Lorenzen and Waka. How are you feeling going into this 2-game set against the Royals?
I'm not feeling great because the pitching matchups don't really fall in your favor. Miles Michaelis, a guy that pitches to contact. I just don't trust Miles Michaelis at this point. I think you're hoping for 5 innings out of him. Andre Palante, I'll be curious to know how he lines up, but you know the Royals better than me. You said they've got a lot of right-handed bats in that lineup, and it doesn't play to Andre Palante's strength. So this is the series for me. We talked about it for like 3 days this week about Nolan Arenado. Some of the underlying numbers show a little bit in his favor of maybe he's starting to break out. Well, I think if they're going to be able to win this series, win one of these 2 games, it's probably not going to be because of the pitching staff. It's probably because you're going to see the offense be able to do some damage against Lorenzen and the other starter in this series.
The Royals basically have 2 relevant left-handed bats in their lineup. That's it. It's Michael Massey, who typically bats leadoff for them, and MJ Melendez, who's been up and down this season. But their best hitters are Bobby Witt Jr., Vinny Pasquantino, and Salvador Perez. Those are the guys that are hitting typically 2 through 4 in their lineup. They're all Pasquantino lefty as well. So 2 of the 3 guys that really matter are right-handed, and the 2 guys that are the best hitters, including the guy that's hitting better than anybody in the world right now, which is Bobby Witt Jr. I'm nervous about this series for Andre Palante. This is not the type of matchup that suits him particularly well. Michaelis, I feel a little different about. It could go either way. Bobby Witt Jr. is not going to be a good matchup for him, but Bobby Witt Jr. is not a good matchup for anybody.
Actually, the same about everybody against Michaelis.
They have a massive ballpark in Kansas City. There's more square footage in the outfields than anywhere, I think, other than Colorado, if I'm not mistaken. If you can keep the ball in the ballpark, this actually might be an okay matchup for Miles Michaelis. I'll be curious to see how he does. I feel better about his start than I do about Palante. I don't think this is going to go particularly well for Andre Palante. And I say that as somebody that's higher on Palante than many.
I don't think it's going to go well for either of them. Michaelis, you just said there's no good matchup for Bobby Witt Jr. I can't really point to a matchup that's good for Miles Michaelis right now. I'm very worried about this series and how their pitching is going to hold up against this Kansas City Royals offense.
This should be a series where your offense is able to win it for you. Like it's not easy to hit home runs there, but it's also not easy to hit home runs at Busch Stadium either. The Cardinals have done particularly well against Michael Waka. The guys in your lineup have overall an 1,100 OPS combined against Michael Waka in their respective careers. That's over 93 at-bats for all of them. They're batting .345 against him with an 1,100 OPS. That's pretty damn good. Michael Lorenzen, you have much less experience against, but you've got a few guys that had some history of success against him. One guy that I'm going to be really interested to see if he gets a big spot against Michael Lorenzen is Brandon Crawford, because career 3 for 5 against him, a 1,300 OPS. Watch out, boys. It's the Brandon Crawford return game coming up later on this weekend. Can't wait. That's going to be great.
That shouldn't be a thing.
If he's in the lineup today, that's going to be amazing. 3 for 5, boys. He's got the history.
Is he at short or is he like DH?
I mean, it could be a day off for Mason Wynn. I think if he is going to be getting a game, it would probably be tomorrow or Monday that you would see him in the lineup. So that way they get that 48 hours off for Mason Wynn.
He's a young stallion. His back is fine now. He shouldn't, if I'm being honest, Mason Wynn probably shouldn't get a day off the rest of the regular season.
If they're competitive this weekend and win 1 out of 2, how are you feeling coming up on Monday?
If their pitching does well, I'll feel a little bit better. And if I see life for the offense, I'll feel fine. If it's one of those where like they kind of squeak out a win or the Royals gift them a win, then it'll be a little bit different for me.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think no matter what, though, I'll be happy with 1 win out of 2 because I don't expect them to win either of these games. So if they are able to get one, that's just going to be gravy for them.
That's kind of how I feel. Win 1 out of 2, given the pitching matchups in this one, go into Cincinnati, and probably need a sweep there. That's the kind of team, given what the schedule looks like with the Dodgers, Brewers, Twins, Padres, Yankees, and Brewers coming up. You probably need to get a sweep in Cincinnati. That's where the pressure really starts to mount. Given what the pitching matchups are there, given what you have available to you in that ballpark, that's where you got to get it going. But this weekend, you win 1 out of 2. You, generally speaking, play some pretty decent baseball. I feel pretty good about it coming in on Monday morning.
You know you put yourself in a bad spot if we're saying in early August you have to go to Cincinnati, the Great American Small Park, and you've got to sweep
That's
that
where this
team.
team's at, dude. Like, it's urgency time now. The wins every single day.
With their roster construction, you know? I'm glad we're not playing with a 24-man roster tonight.
7-10 first pitch, so it's probably not a huge surprise that there's no lineup yet, but no lineup yet. And typically they wait a little while longer if they make any kind of a roster move. Do you think they make one today?
No. I think the lineup not being out right now is just we're not 4 hours from first pitch.
Okay.
No, I don't think you're going to see Gorman go down.
I don't think you will either. I think you should, though. I think it would be the smarter thing for them to do. All right, he's Tanner Hendrickson. That is Grant Francis. Grant's done an unbelievable job this week. Sincerely appreciate him hopping in with us and doing a great job on the board. T-Bone's done an awesome job filling in for Alex on the hosting side of things. Alex will be back in with us on Monday at 11 a.m. By the way, you can join 101 ESPN for Blues and Brews on Friday evening, September the 20th at the Anheuser-Busch Brewery. Get fired up for the Blues season at this outdoor street party. Alex is even going to show up, I do believe. He's going to be a part of this, plus appearances by Blues players, alumni, food trucks, 101 ESPN giveaways, and so much more. Tickets on sale right now at 101ESPN.com. We'll talk to you guys on Monday at 11 a.m. Enjoy the weekend. The Fast Lane is coming up next year on 101 ESPN.